Here.
Mary Bowden is absent, Tom Flannery absent, Jeremiah Kuchenberg,
Here.
and Jason Martin.
All right, we'll have a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second the motion.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, motion carries. All right, welcome. How are you guys?
Good.
Excellent, Michelle.
Good, good. Looks like we have a couple blue cards, regarding some coaches and some administration and I can't quite read all your handwriting, but I just wanna give you a reminder that it's 5 minutes. And Harley will keep you the timekeeper. May or may not get any response to you not being on the agenda, you know.
I understand.
And if it's personnel issues, you know, we for sure won't reply. Respond, right?
Understood.
Okay.
I do have one question. If I do submit something to you folks, is it something that you keep to yourselves and it's not made public?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If,
If it's submitted to, no, if it's submitted to 3 or more board members, it's public record.
Okay.
You're talking about just emailing though, aren't you? What kind of communication are you talking about?
If
Really,
you were to
the-
hand you a record, it would become public.
It's public record communication with the board member regardless.
Okay.
their
Yeah.
phone numbers are online though, so you can have one-on-one conversations too.
Okay.
I thought that's what you're talking about.
And that would not be public record.
Okay. But it has to be to more than,
So
Three board
any
members.
written communication that you do is basically, public records request available.
okay,
So in that sense, like communication, like if it's school related, things like that. So if somebody did a records request of like maybe parent comments related to or something like that, technically would fall under there. If, what Harley's saying is, if you called them one-on-one, like your conversation that you have over the phone, that's not public records request. Anything that's sent to 3 or more is for sure public record, because we have to do quorum type.
all right.
So, just for whatever that might be, just that would be something that would be public record. Now, on that note, sometimes it's a matter of whether or not somebody requests that. So sometimes they can keep information like to themselves unless it's requested. Or it relates to something that, might be employee specific or something like that as well.
Okay.
Can I make a comment on employee specific?
Sure.
too? You had mentioned like if it's about an employee.
Personnel issues.
Right.
yeah.
So,
Just so you know, just any public comment specific to an employee would not be appropriate, like
yeah,
specific.
we have to cut
names.
you off if you make a public comment about a person, employee.
Oh, yes,
Just so you know,
I
just
understand
wanted to
that.
clarify.
However, I do still want to present, one of this, actually.
Okay.
I have spoken with a great many people, that are in my shoes as well. And there's an awful lot, I mean, actually great concern on how a lot of our student athletes are being handled, how they're being coached, how they're being treated. So much that, I mean, it literally has enraged me, the abuse that they have been exposed to and the retaliation that they have been exposed to. And I would really hope that as a district and a community, we're able to check that. I have spoken to different members of administration, and I don't feel that, along with others, do not feel that anything has been handled appropriately. And in my opinion, and it's also quite literally put them on the spot, administration I'm speaking of, to do what they can acting accordingly when in the first place they never should have to. And I would like to reference that as a cancer, for example. You've got a symptom here, and you've got a symptom here, you can treat this and you can treat this, but if you don't actually remove the cancer, the symptoms are gonna continue to come back. And I feel like that's actually the best road for this district, especially for these kids and their safety and their futures. Because I'm not seeing positive role models happen. And when I know for myself, I've tried to be a positive role model, I've been shut down immediately. First off, being a parent of a student that has done nothing but excel and try to be a role model himself, I take that to heart. So, I don't know, I don't want this to become public record. However, in a couple of hours' time, I have been able to gather multiple signatures from student athletes' parents, along with other bystanders that have witnessed this abuse that has taken place. I'm referring to mental abuse or emotional abuse, verbal abuse, also physical abuse. And some of those have actually been laid out in the letter that I gave to Mr. Martin there. So I'm hoping that this is something that can be looked into further and dealt with.
What I would just state, because they can't respond anyways, is physical abuse, I do need that period, because per law, that has to be investigated regardless. So whether this was anonymous or anything along those lines, that directly does need to go to me. So, just as an FYI,
I understand.
okay. Thank you.
I was planning on
Okay.
giving everyone one, but,
That goes for physical, mental, and verbal.
Yeah, well, the physical, there's specific laws that will require an investigation if there's a claim. There's I think it was a year or two ago,
it was 2 years ago.
2 years ago. The law was passed that if there was ever any physical claim of abuse, that there has to be a specific investigation that
Right.
occurs.
Does
So,
that have to be, reported by the student, or the person who was?
it has to be reported, no, they changed the law, so it just has to be reported by a non-anonymous source.
You got one a minute if you would like.
Sorry.
Boy, that had just triggered something, and now I'm trying to remember. A lot of these instances that have taken place have been witnessed, and a few of the student athletes that I know have come to me have shared that information with me, but also begged me not to say anything. My son is one of them. My son was not physically abused, just so everyone knows. However, he has seen the abuse and been exposed to that abuse and has begged me not to say anything. Well, I'm not a professional, but in my opinion, for someone to beg for that not to be talked about, that's fear. That is a clear-cut sign of abuse. And I can't stand by and watch it anymore. I really can't. So I'm hoping that with everybody's help that's involved, we can actually do something about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Roy.
All
Bethany?
right. Yeah, so I would like to talk tonight about coaching performance and evaluation. So while firmly in our household, and I'm sure y'all's number one priority is the education of these students, and I understand that. Our student athletes are clearly told that extracurriculars are a privilege. It's in the handbook, almost verbatim. In the same way, I feel like being allowed to coach these kids while it's a job and they are employees is also a privilege. When these kids are involved in these athletics, they're at their best. They're doing what they love. Some of them, it's their passion. I know some kids, it's the reason they come to school, is so that they can run track or play basketball. It's their motivator to even get them here during the day. We all share an obligation to create, I'm going to quote your board policy 400, a cooperative, enthusiastic, supportive learning environment for students. So for me, this extends into athletics, and it starts with our coaches. And according to the job description for the head coach, they are to provide leadership to help each participant achieve a high level of skill, appreciate the value of discipline, and increase the level of self-esteem. I would like to know how that's being measured. Those are some pretty high-arching, big words, and from what I see, there's not a consistent experience across our coaching, across the sports. And so, according to Iowa Code, I am going to paraphrase, Iowa Code 279.14 and 279.23a, the establishment of evaluation criteria, the annual implementation of evaluation procedures, and the determination of standards of performance are an exclusive management right of the school board. So I would ask you all to really consider putting more rigor in place around how we evaluate these coaches and ensure that they're at their best so that our kids are getting the most out of these athletics. So you may ask, what measures do we use? Just so you know, there are two decisions from the Iowa Supreme Court that imply team performance. Your win-loss record is not a measure of performance. I honestly, I've been a youth coach. I still coach archery. All of my players have heard me say, I don't care if we win or lose, what'd you learn today, right? And so the legal standard is in place for criteria for coaches, such as participation, cooperation with school policies, player development, treatment of students, the organization and use of practice time and lesson plans, much like you would evaluate your teachers. So I would also ask you how these measures, if we have any, are being communicated, and those expectations being communicated to our coaches. I did request any handbooks associated with coaches. I was provided the employee handbook, which is appropriate. They are employees, but there's no coach's handbook, and really not all the policies in the employee handbook apply. When I look at, I did a quick internet search, and some of those bigger schools around us, your 2A, 3A, 4A schools, they've got coaches' handbooks. The evaluation criteria are clearly laid out and publicly accessible, and I think that's the transparency that we need. I would also ask how often we're doing these evaluations, because according to the head coach job description, it's tri-annually, which for me actually has dual meaning. Is that 3 times a year or once every 3 years? So it's unclear language, and I would just ask you, I'm going to assume, I don't even know how often is it once every 3 years? Thank you. That was my assumption, because I don't even imagine we do teachers 3 times a year. I would ask this board to consider what happens if you don't look at your budget for 3 years. How long would it take you to course correct versus having regular check-ins and keeping an eye on things, giving an opportunity to give feedback, see where we've made mistakes, and make corrections and go forward. So I do know we're also looking at a new conference. And so I would like to say that I see this as an opportunity right now to shore up some processes and put more rigor in place, really tidy up our house before we invite others in. We've got a lot of newfound growth in the district. It's very exciting. We are 2A from a district level. I realize at conference level we still play a lot of 1A schools. But for me it comes down to, if I make a lot of equations back to business. And if we were a startup, you don't go from startup to Fortune 500 overnight. There's a lot of work that goes in between to make sure you've got the processes, the procedures, and all of those things in place to make sure that everybody's going to be successful. So I would ask the board, again, between establishing job descriptions and these evaluation criteria, a lot of that falls with you. And I would ask you to dig in and take a look. Thank you.
Thanks, Bethany. You guys are free to go, or you can stay wherever you want to do.
Thank you.
Alright, on to, board reports here. That'd be you.
That'd be me. Sorry, I'm the only one.
Getting us board members, you guys have anything?
No.
I skipped you guys, sorry. Alright, well now it's you.
Feel left out.
So first, we're going to the new student information system, which is going to be Alma. And, we are in the middle of that process. The lunch account is Link that goes along with that. And that process,
Just to clarify, Link is the name of the lunch
Of
account, it's
the
not
lunch
linked
account
with
system.
Alma.
it's not Link, yes, sorry, thank you, LINQ, Link.
Link.
But both those should be more, particularly parent, student, and teacher friendly. Like I said, there's some administrative things that weren't as easy, honestly, but to be honest, JMC wasn't good anyway, so it's not like it made it worse, it just didn't make some of those better. But from the parent experience and from the student and teacher experience, it's gonna be quite a bit better. And, so with that, we did, that, system is gonna have like the messaging system that we need. And so we did not continue with,
Reach call.
thank you, Reachwell. And honestly, that has actually, so I sent out a message at the end on Reachwell, and I asked for any community members to fill out a Google form. Because I said, we have everybody on JMC already that were parents, so we could send parents messages through JMC. Reachwell was supposed to be for other community members who were not, family members to get notifications as well, and that's why we started using the Reachwell system, so then that way anybody could get it. And I said, you only need to fill out the Google form if you do not have a kid in school, because otherwise you'll already automatically be on Alma. I have had 0 people fill it out. Nobody. And I had one that asked about it, and they're like, oh wait, no, we have a kid, so never mind. And so,
Just remembered.
yeah, we have a kid. So, so I think it actually shows that Reachwell was probably an expense we didn't need to have anyway, because it was about $5,000 a year. And so, that was probably an expense we did not need to have anyway. So, once we get, we're just at a little bit of a phase, we do have JMC through August, and then in August we'll move over fully to Alma. And so then that way it'll be kind of a transition at that
But
point.
will community members be able to use Alma?
Yes, but they'll get the messages automatically because we're uploading them. And community members still have to sign up, that's what that Google form was for, because I was gonna put them in Alma, using the information from the Google form. I just haven't any community members sign up, so I'll just put that in the newsletter that'll go out in August and remind them again. If you want to be on school communications but have no children in the district, you need to fill out this Google form and we'll add you.
And which, did you already, I can't remember, did you already communicate there was
The fees?
the fees?
Yes, I did that in the end of the year newsletter, and I'll do it again in the August newsletter, so
Okay.
I'll reiterate that again in the August newsletter.
Cause I know people are gonna probably gripe about it, but once we show them, you just pay with a check,
mhm.
you're fine, and oh, by the way, the district saves money.
The district saves $10,000
Yeah.
in fees a year that way.
Yeah.
Does that include getting rid of Reachwell?
No, Reachwell was additional, but now Alma was more expensive, between Alma and Link, that was more expensive than JMC. Part of why JMC was cheaper is because it's just that base level abilities.
Yeah.
So it was more expensive, but net, we still, in essence, are paying less because between the 10,000 in fees and the 5,000 in Reachwell. Reachwell was to negate Link, and then the 10,000, made it so Alma was just a little less expensive. So, but I will put that out there again, and we'll put them on there. I think honestly, it will also be a time for us to maybe evaluate the newsletter piece, cause we spent, prior to me coming, when we sent out 9 newsletters a year, we spent $12,000 a year sending out paper newsletters. We moved that down to 5 newsletters, and so we spent a little over 6 this year in newsletters. But we're still spending $6,000 a year to send out the newsletters, and the majority of the people would look at them digitally anyway. So when I sent them out, I started sending them out on Reachwell at the end of the year, and most of them looked at them on Reachwell and never looked at them on the paper form then. So I think that's something to evaluate this year. I won't move to it this year, but it's something to maybe try to get some feedback from people, like, do you only look at the paper one? Because I don't know if it's worth sending them out for $6,000 a year, to be honest. But, cause I could honestly, and then I could go back to more frequent and just put them on, and we could post them on the social media sites as well, so then that way people would have access to it that way.
And the other thing is, we don't know what printing costs are gonna be this year with
Mhm.
Grant Wood, so, but it might be more than $6,000.
They could say, well, you guys are taking everything, so.
That's kinda, yeah, that's where I'm feeling a little bit, I feel like that's a little bit of the direction.
So we might just see what the first billing was.
But, I mean, honestly, it'd be something where I don't know if, and, I don't know if it'd be necessary, but it's something I'll try to evaluate this year and give you guys feedback and see what people tell me, but if I find out if there's a lot. The next one is I moved the strategic plan, if you could just take one and pass it down, I'll take two of this. I'm sorry. This is the draft, I was gonna have that as an item to discuss more, but with how long this agenda got, I thought it might actually be easier to let you guys take it with you. It'll be on the agenda now, so people can pull it out from, if they look at the agenda, they can pull it out on home, it's linked there. And you guys can take some time to really look through it and dive in. I do have an action plan to go along with it, but I'm gonna bring the action plan to you after the goals are approved, because I would like to go over that with staff more. I didn't get to go over it with them enough, and I've made changes to the action plan. I'd like to go over that with staff before I bring that action plan to you, of like how we're gonna meet these goals. So this is the goals that I would want you to look over, give me feedback on, are there things you like or don't like? I can make changes to those from that point, and then after you've approved them, then I'll finalize the action plan with staff and bring that to you in the fall. Because again, I have one, I changed a good amount of it, and I didn't get to meet with staff a lot before the school year ended on the action plan. So I'd like to do that first too. And so this is more, take it with you, you can look it over the next month, email me, call me, tell me if there's anything you don't like, or if there's things that you're like, I really like this. Again, it's the 5 sections, so there's academic, is that first piece there. Then there is professional learning, then there's financial, facilities, and recruitment and retainage.
Harley,
I should probably change it to retention.
with what we're doing right now, are we on track for,
Yes, we are on track, we are not gonna be 100%. Like, when I talked to you guys about spending, 100 or less than 100% of our revenue, I mean, we're making corrections, we're not though less than 100%. But I didn't expect it to happen in 1 year. But yes, we are, and have been, that has been the goal, so.
I know, I missed that when I had to change it to retention. I just think about the building project a lot, so please forgive me. Get a lot of calls about that too.
Did?
I do.
Not to change the subject, but pay app 31, the final pay, one of the final payouts will come to you in August, so.
They
We're
requested,
getting there.
they requested release of early retained since the punch list is not done. Legally, they can if they send all the information to subcontractors, so it'll probably be approved minus whatever's held for 573 claims. So, because there's not anything we legally could hold that if they get it approved by. So,
We're gonna move now on the other thing.
no, that'll be a while now. That'll be that'll be a couple month process before we have another need to sit down. So, that was those goals there. And then the next thing is the conference realignment. So I had asked, we sent out in there to ask people if they wanna come and make comments, if they wanna send contact or contact an administrator, a school board member, anything along those lines. So I was contacted by 2 staff members that are also parents. And then, so Jesse Myers was one of those, and I gotta look at my note for the other one, but, and then Loxley John also did, so I guess 3. Then Alicia Schultz contacted Brian Wartz, Jeff Christofferson, George Gusick, Jeremy Birds, and then 2 more girls wrestling parents that he was gonna give me the names of. And then Nick Woldrick had a couple parents, and Josh Heinrich, so they'll also send me the parents. So far, not a single person has said they are against that conference move. A lot of them are like, definitely see why that's needed. And many of them that had like middle school parents were very for it. Or sorry, middle school kids were for it because their kids didn't have many, if any, games. So they were in favor of it. At least those were the ones that have contacted myself, Brian, Josh, or Nick. Like another example was, which you guys had heard anyways, but like Mark Neighbor had talked to us again afterwards and shared that he felt that it was a good move. He's a Tri-Rivers guy that likes the Tri-Rivers guy, but he feels like it's a good move for us and understands why we would do that. But Did you guys have any people reach out to you directly? And I'm just saying, I try to share the names because otherwise then that's very clear, like these specific people talk to me.
No, I didn't have anybody talk about it.
Yeah, I did. Of course, I'm high schooler, so.
Yeah.
We talked about it. Yeah, we talked about it, and it's the same concern, you know. Are we ready? Are we ready?
Yeah,
You know, are we really ready? Are we up for that task? Are we ready to make that change and we'll find out, I guess. You know, so.
I reckon I might hear about it in the schools, I can say.
yeah, that could be. And I can send out another
I
reminder
mean,
too.
people right now, if they don't have a kid in sports, they're not really paying attention.
And I think everybody understands the ask. I mean, a good example is our softball girls. They dance through the conference and then they get knocked out. You know,
Because they just had a tough game.
Or that's for another conversation.
Yeah.
You know.
But no, I mean, yeah, I would agree. It was, because, you know, you don't get a lot of experience if you're basically done with most games by fourth inning or fifth inning, because you're always kind of running. Yeah. So that's, I just wanted to share that, because I know you guys, the direction had been, get feedback in July and August, and then the decision would be made in September. So as people have contacted me, I've written down their names and what they've said. I've asked the other administrators to do the same, so then that way we can share specific, to who said what and what their statement was. But,
I think everybody understands the ask and you understand
Mhm.
the positives.
Yeah.
around it. Yeah.
So, and we'll keep going. Like I said, if I hear anything different, like I've taken a note of, I haven't had too many people contact me on the conference thing, so. Like I said, I've only had like 2, 3 technically, and, I'm only gonna count to 2 because I can't remember the one name right now.
How would the public have known about it? Was it,
I sent that letter out to all parents, and I'm gonna also add it to the August newsletter, and I sent it out to Reachwell. The issue though I found now with Reachwell after doing that is, there still wasn't a lot of public on Reachwell, even though that's what we expected. So when I put things out on Reachwell, I mean, people were expecting that the community was also giving us. Realistically, like, there were no community members signed up for it, just, parents are community members, but it was only parents.
right,
It wasn't anybody else. So I think that, you know, what's that? So I think it's still important to get more contact, and so, like I said, I've just been, as I've talked to people too, I've said, if you guys have any feelings, please reach out and let us know.
We have to be transparent on that.
Mhm.
It's a big decision.
Yep.
It lasts a long time. And
Yeah.
As long as they see it coming, as long as everybody sees that
Yep.
coming.
But I'll put it in the paper newsletter as well, because that's gonna go out here at the beginning of August, so we'll have before the board meeting. So we'll have that one, that'd be the last option, I think, for really getting it out to community members, since we've already put it out on all of our other things. So, I believe that we did. I know we did for sure on Reachwell, I know we did, I sent it out to all families,
Was it
so.
on Facebook?
I think we also put it on Facebook. Maybe not, if not, we'll add it to Facebook again, but I thought we put it on Facebook, so. But we will, like I said, we'll try to get as much feedback as we can, so you guys can have as much information from people as possible before making that decision. And that, and I'm kind of rushing through this, and purposely, because this is a long board agenda, and so, I wanna not make you guys be here till, I don't wanna make you be here till 11. So that is the end of my
You're all done.
report. Yep.
All right, how about a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, dialogue action. Resolution financial repository.
I can take this one, we do this every year, so just for Iowa code, we have to have resolution on file, that essentially directs me as to the max amount of, money I can put in a bank, so that you know where it's at. I'm hoping for 5 million.
we're open for that too.
Yeah, so,
Uh,
yeah, just a formality.
Make the motion to accept the resolution of financial depository.
second.
So moving and seconded to approve the resolution of financial depository. All in favor?
Aye.
Any further discussion?
Wait, what did you just say?
You're the only one that caught it.
Let's start over. It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution of financial depository. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, motion carries. Sorry about that. It's been a while.
You're good.
It's been a while.
I was like, it's not 9 o'clock yet.
Oh, that's the scary part. Playground bid proposal.
These are the bid documents that the engineer put together. In order to put this out for bid, you do need to approve this. This is based on the minimum that we were gonna get, which is 250,000. We're technically 80,000 short of that 250, and with donations and things like that, and so that would come out of Pepple, that difference. But we did budget 160 in Pepple just to be on the safe side. So, but that's all we could necessarily afford to budget out of Pepple was that 160.
Part of that, the remaining 80, did you already include the 10,000?
Mhm. Yep, so that's got the cost for,
You talking about the donation?
Donation.
yep. that
And
co-
the sale.
And it's
whole
got the sale of the building, so realistically, yeah, we didn't raise a lot in the fundraising side of things. It's not as much as I would have liked, but we did get some chunks. I think that's sometimes where it comes down to, you know.
There are some fundraising efforts that are still
Mhm.
ongoing too, so
Yeah,
So some finals on all in.
Finals
80
are
is
not
the
ongoing.
worst we could.
yeah, it's the most we'll have to pay from that fund, but we did.
Budget 160?
We budgeted 160 out of Pepple, but that's the most we could do with like the roof project and everything along those lines. So, you know, I think it's actually, 80 will be good, because then that gives us kind of an 80,000 cushion on the roof project and things like that, so.
So I see in the bid document, if you just start whenever a person basically gets awarded,
Correct,
so this could theoretically be going on during the school year.
it's gonna have to be. So the earliest it's gonna get done is gonna be end of October, November. So what's gonna happen is, it depends on how fast they can get the equipment. So, because you can't pour the rubber until you get the equipment in there, and about mid-November is the latest you can ever pour the rubber with the weather.
What was the end date on that? I didn't.
November 15th?
The 15th is.
Yep.
is
Is the end date. If they don't get the rubber poured by the 15th, we'll temporarily put in wood chips and then replace those wood chips with poured rubber in the spring. So that'll be what'll happen in that portion of things. We did have to make sure it was done this year though, because of the grant. You can't, spend it this year. So that was the reason. Part of the reason this took longer to get going is because initially, when we did the equipment before, the equipment doesn't require a bid process. The playground equipment itself, unless it exceeds a certain amount, doesn't require a bid process. But adding that poured rubber, that actually is considered a construction project, because they have to do landscaping, concrete pour, and all this other stuff. I did not realize that. And honestly, sometimes people will argue whether or not it is, but legal said you should probably consider it an actual construction project and do a bid process.
Do we know how long it's roughly gonna affect kids not being able to use the equipment?
They would be able to use the other equipment. They just can't use, what they won't be able to use is the climbing wall, and the other space is grass. And the preschool part of it, once the playground equipment comes in, that just needs to be, the preschool part of it, the accessible part, just needs to be drilled into the concrete. So they'll have that right away once we get it. It's just a matter of whether or not, and like I said, we'll put the wood chips on there if we don't get the poured rubber in time, the weather doesn't allow it, or the shipping time for the equipment. And they are supposed to bid an option if we can, because we do have a lot of people that donated manpower in order to put it together, which might save another like 10 grand in that sense, so.
So I have to ask, if we have to do the wood chip thing, or so we're on the hook to clean up those wood chips and all?
We'd be on the hook for, but there's a 31,000, buffer in that 250. So the bid itself, like with the playground equipment and the rubber and all, and the landscaping and tiling that they're gonna have to do to get the water away from there, that bid and the cost of the engineer, all of that is technically net $31,000 less. The estimate is $31,000 less than 250.
It's the contingency he's referring to.
Yes, sorry.
The 15%.
And realistically, like we should, I mean, like, it is, the way that I had the engineer bid it is that even if something, they can't change the square footage cost they bid, period, later.
So we're
Even
not
if
gonna-
prices increase.
We're not gonna have to come back and.
That's what I told them, I said, we can't go over
Another
250.
10 grand to.
Correct. Well,
Wood chips.
we might have to, yes, we would have to, but that would have to come out of the contingency that they're doing. So,
They change
What I'm
order.
saying is, we're not gonna have to spend any more than we've already.
we're not gonna have to spend any more than 250. I told them that, I said 250 is the max, so you need to word it that they cannot change the price after they bid it.
Does not exceed 250.
Yeah, so that's in the bid that's in the bid documents and everything else. And I confirmed that with him. So we don't have to, it should not go above that, because their pricing should not increase. And if they can't make it work, then what they're supposed to do is make it smaller, make the space, instead of increase the price. That's in the bid documents as well.
What are we gonna do with all those wood chips? Should we use
To be honest, if we have to do the wood chips, then my thought is we use, oh gosh, no, it's,
put it in a pile?
well, my thought would be is we actually get the wood chips from the local landscaping company.
Evergreen?
Evergreen, thank you. Evergreen, and because they had approached me anyways about wanting to do the surfacing, but I told them, you know, because they said they have specifically artificially engineered wood chips that are supposed to be ADA compliant. When you look into it, they have to be maintenance fairly often. And when you consider how often kids are using that playground, the amount of maintenance that we would have to do means they're not gonna really be ADA compliant because we can't maintain it at that level. But those are still better than pea gravel. So what we could look at doing is have them come in and do that, and then maybe instead of just taking them all back up again, try to replace some of the pea gravel in there with it instead. That would be my guess. Or that'd be my want, is then if we have to use the wood chips, have them come in and use those wood chips, and then we can specifically move them over to the pea gravel. We'd have to add a little bit more, and then if anything, have them remove the pea gravel. Because quite frankly, that's a liability issue anyway, having pea gravel when kids are playing on the playground.
That's something we can do with our tractor.
Probably, so I can see where you can.
To
scoop it all up.
What the surface is gonna be underneath the wood chips.
Under the new area that we'll have, it's gonna be, it's in the bid documents there. It's not gonna be concrete underneath, it's going to be,
Or is it?
it's on the,
it's in
if you open the final plans.
Yeah, there's a,
Yep,
there's a cross section.
yes, so it's a crushed stone subbase. And you can see how the cross section goes right there. And it is gonna butt up right to the concrete from the basketball hoop right there.
Sure is.
And that was to save us on the curbing, because you have to put concrete on the curb.
Mm.
And so then that saves us on the because then you can have the poured rubber go straight up to it, and that takes one side where you don't have to pour any concrete. But it honestly was more expensive to do the tiling than we expected, because they're gonna have to tile all the way to get the water out of there, so it doesn't mess with the poured rubber base. They're gonna have to tile it all the way to our drains by the bus line there. So they're gonna have to tile it down and around the basketball court.
Hmm.
So, but on the same token, it's not a bad thing, because then,
I feel more contingency still.
I know, right? No, that's always where,
Trenching.
yeah, but again, what happens is in the bid documents, if anything is to exceed, if it was total to exceed 250, we have to then narrow the project and make it smaller, and that's their responsibility. So basically, in essence, because they're supposed to do the tiling and stuff before setting all the, so then, in essence, they're going to,
So they do that too?
like, well, what happens is they have to go with, a construction company, like they have to.
They sub it.
They sub it out, yeah. Yep. Yep. So either we'll have, correction, you'll get two types of bids. You'll get a construction company that's gonna sub out the playground equipment, or you're gonna get a playground company that's gonna sub out the construction side. That's the two ways you can get the bids. So,
Motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the playground bid proposal documents.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the playground bid proposal. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, motion carries. Let's set the public hearing.
yes, so since it is considered a construction project, we need to set a public hearing, so if we can set that for August board meeting, that would be great.
I'll make a motion to set the public hearing for August 19th at 6 p.m.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to set the public hearing for August 19th at 6 p.m. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Hardin Solutions lease.
So this is for the outside counselor that comes in, and the outside counselor is not us. We do not pay for any of this. It's a service we've offered. We have a lot of students that would leave for counseling services and be gone all day for like counseling, just one session, at least a half a day. There are a lot of parents that have requested this, as other schools offer it. And so, again, this is basically what we do, is we just allow them a space. We do not allow them to access the children unless parents have specifically given consent, and it's written consent. So meaning that, for example, if a student wants to, like if they feel that they wanted to meet with this counselor, the counselor has a sheet that she gives them, as well as posted out there that says, if you're interested, you need to let your parents know, and they need to come in and meet with me and you.
And that should alleviate some of the worries that people have had,
Correct.
like, is somebody gonna be meeting with my child that I
Correct.
don't even know about?
And I even added this in the lease page, and the lease piece is because the legal just recommends we have, because this is what we do for the Booster Club. If you have anybody using your facilities, and it's not like a rental kind of thing, we should have a lease for it. And so I copied really in essence the lease from the Booster Club and made some changes, but if you open the lease, I did specifically put that in there, that, the leasee, will not have access to students outside of those for which parents and guardians have provided written permission. So, that's in the agreement
So
specifically.
the parents, the family actually pays Hardin Solutions.
So it's basically, Hardin Solutions does it because then they can be the provider when these families feel they need a counselor provider. Then that's an easy option for them, so that's the benefit of Hardin Solutions. And then for the families, it is easy access. They don't have to try to cut off work to take them to a counselor. They can do it during the day. They don't miss a lot of school, so that's a great benefit for us. Because when you have kids go to a counseling session during the middle of the day, you know, they're going to Cedar Rapids, it's gonna be at least 2 hours that they're going. They usually miss at least a half a day. Sometimes the parents just keep them for the whole day. But again, the key is, it is not, that counselor does not have access to any child without written parent consent. So I think that's the big thing there. And I don't think anybody that, because people had expressed concerns to me initially, and when I explained that to them, not a single person seemed upset after that. When they realized, well, this counselor is not gonna talk to my kids unless I give written consent, I think they're okay with that. And that's in the agreement, that's in the sheet she hands to kids if they say they wanna meet with her. That's posted outside her office, all of those places, if you need to meet with your parent first.
And all their invoicing, all their.
That goes
all
straight
their-
between them, we're not a middleman at all, so.
Would, does this district then in any way, shape, or form, just like you have with your teachers, you have checks and balances for your teachers and how they interact with students, is there any checks and balances for this?
We don't have any
person?
control over that, which is why we require the parent permission.
But the flip side of that though, does that like substantially kind of decrease our liability?
That's what the lease is for.
Okay.
But I asked legal, if something were to happen, we'd still don't.
That's all, ultimately,
It's
you know,
our
like, all of
A
a sudden
little
child-
bit, yeah.
a child would, you know, say, oh, this person did this.
Yeah, it's, in a sense, it's similar to even the playground piece out there. We can put rules up there to say, here's the rules you have to follow. But you always have some liability because it's your property, unless there's a specific law that takes away liability. And for us, like, when no events is out there, we don't have liability because there's a law that states we don't have liability on our playground because it's public and there's the expectation per se. But when we have an event out there, we have liability because we're legally responsible for providing supervision then, if that's our facility. So, but having those rules out there reduces the liability. Having this lease reduces our liability if anything were to happen.
So we're just renting out an office space.
Basically, that's it.
And then the only way we'd be liable is if we were negligent on.
Usually,
letting
because
something
otherwise they would go
happen
straight to
right-
Harden Solutions.
Right in front of our eyes, or
Yeah.
maybe somebody witnessed something, they didn't say anything, that would be our liability, not if something went awry or went
Mhm.
haywire with this counselor.
That's generally what it would be, but, I mean, there's always, I can't say it's 100%, because there's always a chance, you know, there's always
People
people
can,
that would.
you can sue whoever
People
you
can
want.
sue for anybody.
Yeah.
But on the same token, like, this makes it so the liability is a lot less.
So, question then, are we getting anything out of it, or like,
We are getting more student attendance. It's a big demand for the parents that want their child to be in there. She's full. She's full. She's completely booked.
How many kids is that?
I have to double check, but I think it might have been 40.
No kid.
Is that like is she here every day?
Mm-hmm. I think it's like 40 kids. I can't remember what her caseload is, but it's somewhere in there. She's full. She was full about halfway through the year.
so we get more student attendance out of it?
Mm-hmm. We get more student attendance, and honestly, the kids that, what I would tell you is that some of the kids that go to her generally usually have behavior issues and things like that.
Mhm.
We have less behaviors.
Less behaviors.
Mhm.
The only thing I was kind of itching for is think about it, if our liability is increasing.
Do we wanna take the risk?
Well, is there some way to offset the liability by like, with insurance? Do we,
We have all of our staff are covered under an EMC policy. And our liability for like facilities and stuff is covered. And I think that's part of what the lease does too, is because we lease out the space, then now we're covered under our liability policy as well. What the specifics are of that policy, I couldn't tell you unless I went back and looked at it.
I mean, and to cover some sort of like additional policy, like I just looked at what we pay neighbor insurance for our excess liability, it's like, let's say it's one.
Oh yeah, we have, and there is an
That's
option for number
$12,000.
5.
It's 12,000, I mean, so you'd have to charge like a pretty substantial rent or lease payment to cover any sort of excess liabilities, I don't know.
It probably would be worth it. I mean, our 10 million coverage would probably cover what anything like that.
So we used to have an agreement with Covenant. You remember that?
Mhm.
And that really made me uncomfortable because I didn't feel like the school wanted to be in healthcare, mental health care,
Yeah.
What this does is it kind of takes us out of it, we're just providing space,
Mhm.
but at the same time, we're keeping kids on campus.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I look at.
And they're more successful usually on campus after working with her.
I feel
because
way
they
more
have-
comfortable with this agreement than the Covenant.
And there's no cost to us, like, we're with Covenant, we did have a huge
Exactly,
cost
yeah,
with that.
and just, something like that.
With the caseload that she's got, would there ever be need for more than one?
You know,
Do we have the room for it?
We don't have the
If-
room
If
for
they
it,
were
to be
able to
honest.
provide that, 'cause that's more of a staffing issue on their end,
mhm.
right?
And I would tell you right now, we do not have the space for it because, we eventually figured a space for her, but, it was a little bit of a bounce around
Sounds
this.
like they should have bought South Camp.
Yeah, I know, right? The honest approach, but it was a little bit of a bounce around. We do have a good space now that works out very well that we were not gonna be utilizing. It's not a classroom because we utilize all the classrooms right now, but, I don't think I could find another one right now if you ask me to. I mean, I could.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the Art Solutions lease.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Heart Solutions list. Any further conversation?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, motion carries. Sharing agreement with work-based learning coordinator.
Awesome. So I've been looking at ways we can try to utilize some of the shared positions. We utilize a very low number. The HR is a shared position. Basically what that means is we get extra students for shared positions. So like the HR is one, we do transportation director, technically, and, that's it, right? Yeah. And so there's technically, there's over 20 sharing students you can get. And we were only utilizing like 6 or 7. So I've been trying to look for other things that we could do. We already utilize Kirkwood for their work-based learning pieces. But what they had before is they had one coordinator that was like over multiple counties and multiple districts. So you never really saw them. They just did a lot of the paperwork things for us. And so all of that fell onto Sue. And in essence, you kind of miss out on some opportunities because she's got a lot of stuff to do anyways as the high school counselor. So the work-based learning coordinator is a position that they allow you to share, and you get 2 students for it, so it's about 15,000. And so this is an agreement for us to go with Kirkwood, and what that would mean is they would take they have multiple of these coordinators, because they do it for so many districts. We would take one of those coordinators and we'd get guaranteed 1/5 of their time. And in exchange, we would technically pay 12,000, but we're getting 15,000 from the state. So net, we're gaining 3, which almost pays for what we have to pay them to have our course classes that we offer. Like, so we have to pay them like a set fee to offer courses to begin with from Kirkwood. And so then that's 3,500 that we pay every year.
So why wouldn't we do it?
So that's the thing. So what we end up doing is we would do this. We would net gain $3,000, which we would then just use to basically pay for the Kirkwood. So we're still net gaining it in our budget. And then we would have this person guaranteed 1/5 of their time is ours. Now, it doesn't mean they're gonna be here 1/5 of the time, but then we are actually gonna get somebody in person that's gonna be coming in, meeting with kids, helping plan more job shadows, trying to get more internships going for them, more work-based learning placements, and honestly, it would take some work off of Sue at the same time. And so I think really it's just a benefit, because we go through them anyways. We would just have this person here dedicating they'd be here some of the time, which they're never here now. And they would dedicate 1/5 of their time every week to Alburnett specific stuff.
So what does that time frame look like for that person? What do they do in that time frame?
Yep, so most of the time, they're still probably gonna be at Kirkwood, because what they do is they arrange job shadows, internships, and placements for like, registered apprentices and things like that. But right now, again, it's very hands-off, and Sue might just tell them, like, we have these kids that might be interested in this, and then they try to just match. What they'd be doing now is they're gonna come meet with all of our kids, at least our juniors and seniors, and then they're gonna try to align the opportunities with what their interests are. They're gonna specifically place with them and work directly with them. And so then that way, probably getting more job shadows, things like that. This is the first year that Kirkwood's doing it, so I'm not 100%, and they're not 100% on what that looks like. This is kind of what I was discussing with Christy, who's from Kirkwood. Overall, the worst that happens is we don't really get a lot of benefit out of it, and but we still gain $3,000 from it.
Yeah.
The worst that happens is we don't really get a great benefit out of it than what we already are getting. We gain $3,000.
The only thing that I would ask, and maybe Sue's already gonna do this, since it's new, like, I'm assuming they're gonna coordinate, so they're not duplicating efforts.
Yep, and
And the
so
way-
basically, they are gonna assign one person, one of those coordinators, and then that person in August is gonna reach out to Brian and Sue to set up a meeting so they can start planning what this will look like more in depth.
Cause to me, it almost looks and feels like this person would be Sue's administrator in a sense. Because Sue would be lining everything up and then maybe kicking the work to this person.
Well, it'll all be just for one area, cause Sue has a lot of hats. Cause she also then is doing like her counseling stuff, she does a lot with scheduling, so the college classes and that work-based learning piece is really only one portion of what she's doing. And in essence, I think what would happen more is, instead of her trying to find some of these things, she's gonna let this person find some of those things after talking with the kids individually. And then hopefully he'll or she will tailor these things more specifically to what the kids are saying, these are my interests, or this is what I wanna do. And that's hopefully what I think is gonna be the result, and it provides more opportunities for the kids. Because we get a lot of kids in job shadows, we don't get nearly as many internships. And part of that, I think, is because of the disconnect between Kirkwood and us, since they're placing our internships. And so I think that's part of it. When we have to do it, we have to go try to find the businesses where the internship happens. This person will go find those businesses for us.
Okay.
At least they're supposed to.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the sharing agreement for a work-based learning coordinator.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the sharing agreement for a work-based learning coordinator with Kirkwood. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed, same sign, motion carries. Appoint the level 1 and level 2 investigators.
And this one is basically the same as last year, there's just one thing I wanted to add, is instead of having just the principals, I did add myself, this is part of the new Title IX stuff. Because I might end up becoming an investigator, if a Title IX claim doesn't turn out to be Title IX, then I would still have to finish investigating it though as a level 1. So I thought instead of then trying to turn it over to one of the principals and have them take on some investigation midway through, it'd be easier to just also assign me as one of the level 1 investigators. I'm really hoping that I don't spend too much time doing any, I hope we don't ever have level, I mean, the better thing is if you don't ever have to have it, but, on the same token, then that way I would also, not just the principals, but myself would be a level 1 as well.
And Ann Morgan is the,
Ann Morgan is the third party.
she's the
independent.
same one.
Yep, she's the same one as last year, so she's an independent investigator, so if there ever seems to be a need, we would utilize her as, and we pay her a rate, and then she would perform the level 1 investigation.
And you told me this, but how many times have we used her?
0.
Right, how many level 2 investigations do we have total?
Level 2, 0.
Okay.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
Sorry, if you stay till the end, or if you wanna meet with me at any time, I can go over any of this stuff with you if you'd like.
Perfect.
I'll make a motion to approve the, level 1, level 2 investigators.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to appoint level 1 and level 2 investigators. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, motion carries. Teacher Quality Committee.
So for teacher quality funds, we have to actually have a teacher quality committee, and, you have to appoint the administrators on that committee. And, if the teachers' names and such we'll bring to you as well later, but it's basically just the different teacher, that'll be our building, or our district leadership team. So this is just ask you to approve the administrators to be part of it.
I will make a motion to approve the teacher quality committee appointments of administrators.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the teacher quality committee appointments of administrators. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, motion carries. Staff handbook.
These are the changes that were brought after we sent this to legal for review, so, when, it's always
Got the
just.
red pen.
Another red pen, yeah, you know, they bring the red pen, and, it's highlighted in orange, what the changes were, so if you click on that and open it up, the yellow is what you guys approved the first time through, orange is what they changed, and some of the yellow that we approved is now orange, so you wouldn't necessarily see that, but, the big one, there's some minor pieces in there, but there, I should say, there's really like, one big one is the TSS.
Yeah, I see they.
And they told us to just take it out. And so,
Why is that? Because it may change next year.
yeah, you don't wanna be, they said you don't wanna be stuck doing something that might be contradictory, or that would be hard to deal with.
Which in all honesty is kind of where we're at this year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree with what we've done, but we could have had more leniency and done more what you guys wanted to.
Without
Had we
it in
not
the
had
handbook.
that
Right.
description in there. The other one is FMLA, and it's,
I'll let you tell.
our policy is just not, it's not descriptive enough, and so there are a lot of loopholes that we were finding ourselves in. And so with things like that, we just need to be more clear in our policy. And so we had taken a stab at it, and then she got back to us about what it should say. So we'll actually talk about that more, I think, and you're.
And one of the board policy, two of them, couple of them.
Yeah, the handbook just reflects the board policy, so we'll need it changed in policy as well.
But it's what we'll recommend too.
Turn to she recommended jury duty thing, any idea?
Probably experience that she's had.
Something came up.
We've never had that really, but take her advice before it happens here.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, she didn't change much.
Not a ton, it was really the big ones, there were some words like here and there, like must or weak and
Mm-hmm.
things like that, and then the TSS, FMLA, she added a sentence at the end of the handbook.
Agreement,
Mhm.
yeah.
I should know this, but that TSS, what can you use that for besides salary?
Just salary, that's
Oh,
what
it
we
is
used
just
to use
salary.
it for. But how we divide it was in the handbook, and how we used it, like how we divvied it was in the handbook, so then you could do nothing but was it, what was in the handbook.
So, there was a line in there that said something about overspending, and then there would be an adjustment. How do you overspend TSS?
If you hire, if
Yeah.
you were to hire more staff. So like if our handbook says we're gonna split it evenly, but then we had a 5% hold back, and then we actually hired enough people that really overspends it by 10%, that other 5 is from another general fund.
I gotcha.
Which, and yeah, it's really a challenge this year because TSS said we were gonna spend it this evenly, but then the legislation said you have to spend your TSS to get all of your teachers up to the thresholds. Well, how can we do both? We can't. And so that's where, like, I really agree with what she's saying, we need to have the ability to adjust, especially when legislation now is really involved in TSS.
Mhm.
And when we figure out what we're gonna do moving forward, I think that will make it
So
very
with new
easy.
legislation, TSS isn't going away.
No,
No,
they're
It's
increasing
just,
it.
it's just,
This is how you get that gap fill from what we pay versus what the state minimum wage is, or state minimum salary.
we just have to use it before they actually supplement it. We have to use our allocated TSS before they give us more.
No, they give us all of that, but what happens is what they give you, you have to do those, you have to meet the minimums first. And so then with what's left over, then it's how do you necessarily figure what you're gonna do with what's left over? Plus, if we had the wording that we had in there, it would contradict meeting the minimums with the TSS first.
So the change is really just giving us more
More flexibility.
flexibility to
Mhm.
use it up.
So the plan, I guess, for moving forward would be, that we have, when we get our TSS, so last year our TSS allocation was like $300,000. This year it's gonna be like 580 or something like that. And so, what we did this year is we used that original like calculated amount and still divided that evenly, and then the difference, we're gonna use that to get our teachers up to the threshold, right?
Right.
So next year, we won't really, it's not gonna be 2 buckets anymore, they're gonna give us all maybe 580, or it could be 600, or whatever the calculation is, and they're gonna say, you first have to meet your, all we care about is that you make sure that your staff are meeting these 2 minimum thresholds. And so we can do that, but then what are we gonna do with the rest of it, is it gonna be evenly distributed
Yeah,
again?
cause you're gonna have less for everybody else.
Right, yes, but in theory though, as salaries increase, it would take less for us to meet those minimums, and then everyone else would receive more year after year. And so, it just wasn't, we weren't able to do it with the language in the handbook,
Gotcha.
and so,
Sorry, that's
So to get to the point where we're able to distribute that a little more equally, it's more of a long-term plan
it's
that
gonna
we
have to be, yeah.
Okay.
But I would imagine, what I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that we would come to you more on an annual basis and talk about that. Or, you know, here's our plan moving forward, and until you hear differently, that's would be how we were doing it. It's just not gonna be the handbook anymore. Does that make sense?
She did recommend not putting it back in the moving forward either, just to give the board more flexibility.
And this used to be in master contract, and then it got taken out with chapter 12 changes, and now it was in the handbook, and now they're saying take it out of the handbook, so who knows?
Guess I'll make a motion to approve the legal review of the staffing.
Second the motion?
Been moved and seconded to approve the legal review of the staff handbook. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, motion carried. Emergency operation plan.
This is the same as it was before, and if you wanted to review it, we do have to go into closed session to review it. I did ask you guys in the, update when I kinda went over the agenda with you, to let me know I did not print any copies, cause nobody said they wanted to go over it. We didn't make any changes, just like last year we didn't. There is one thing I will let you know, I may, like I mentioned to you guys before, I'm looking into FEMA grants for out in the, out in the Martin complex. The reason being, because, you know, we talk about lockers, and lockers really are too expensive to do, cause it's probably gonna be like 1.5. How we did the FEMA one there is, they do a shell. They provide the funding to put the shell in there, and then you can put whatever you want inside. We don't have any kind of storm shelter out there, so I'm looking into, I don't know if this will go anywhere or not, but I'm looking in to see if we can do something similar and get some kind of like FEMA grant to at least put the shell out there, and then we could add like locker rooms and stuff inside it, because we have no shelter, so it'd be legitimate for a FEMA request. There's no shelter nearby either, you know, so when you got that many people out there, a sudden storm thing, I mean, we don't, the actual building there is not strong enough to withstand like tornado kind of things. So, with that being the case, and I don't know if we'll even, if we would be able to get it or not, but I am going to look into that. If we did ever get that, I would need to update our emergency operations plan for what we would do out at the Martin Sports Complex. So I would bring it back at that point, and we'd have to go into closed session for you guys to see it, but otherwise we haven't made any updates to it.
We have a FEMA portion now.
Mhm.
The FEMA's already granted us that building.
Mm-hmm.
That was one financial decision that got us in trouble, because they thought they covered the whole, previous superintendent thought that FEMA covered the whole thing.
And we only covered
I don't know
shell.
how you
Then
missed
we
that.
covered the
I
shell.
don't know how you missed that, cause that's a pretty important detail,
Mhm.
but we had to come up with, or I should say they had to come up with a pile of money to
Who's they?
finish off that school board and that administration plan.
Well, this is way back.
Two superintendents ago.
And part of my ignorance, emergency operation plan, is that only for severe weather?
No, that also includes like active shooter, things like that. So for example, in that plan, which is also part of our board policy, we require, and I mean, this one is a public thing, so it's not like I'm releasing, but the reason it's confidential is because it has things like active shooter in there. But for example, we require Alice training or review every year for all staff. And so that's per board policy, that's also in our emergency operations plan. So, if, for example, again in August, we have the sheriff's department coming, they'll do another Alice training for our staff, they do that every year. And so, like that's part of the plan, so we follow it. But, it does have other active shooter things in there as well, like how we would train students and things like that.
That's why we have to go to closed session to discuss that, or to review that,
Mhm.
because we don't want the public, just anybody knowing.
Right. Well, this is how.
This is the plan.
This is the plan.
Yeah. Am I able to come
Yes,
in
absolutely.
sometime? and
Absolutely.
review
We
it?
should do that.
That way.
Absolutely.
Session for this.
Very
Yep,
interesting.
we can do that anytime you would like.
Okay.
And so you just tell me when, I'll get it out. It's a fairly long document, so give yourself a little bit of time. We don't have to go over it all super in depth. I can give you like overviews of each one, but, yeah. So Josh Hendrickson was our lead on that, and so he was the lead on creating that years back. And so, he wrote the majority of the plan that was first approved. So,
I'll make a motion to approve the emergency operation plan.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the emergency operation plan. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Same sign, motion carries. Policies related to Title IX.
so you have these in front of you. These are all your new policies, and from the first part is the legislative policies, and these are the Title IX. So they, if you had your review binder, you can add a 3-hole punch tip. You can also just take it back if you want. But just go ahead and, just for the first ones, I wanna go over, this. Now, as I mentioned in the video, the Title IX changes, were created by the Federal Department of Education. So this was not created like in Congress or anything along those lines. It was specifically created at the federal level at the US Department of Education. So what they did is they did a review, and they said, these are the changes we believe need to happen based on Title IX. So they have an authority to interpret law to a degree. And so when they come out with those, that does become administrative law. But right now, what they came out and said in the policies, there are multiple states, in fact, there are 25 states that are suing, saying that they overstepped their authority in how they made the changes in, and the span of the changes that they made.
Since you worded it that way, I definitely believe it is probably gonna be thrown out because of the Chevron doctrine stuff too that happened.
That's what I was thinking too. That's exactly what my case reference was, is because they already threw out the Chevron one. So I'm thinking they're probably gonna throw this one out too.
Yeah.
But
And that's totally related to this.
what it comes into is, so this goes by federal region. So like, for example, the region that I believe Texas is in, their judge put an injunction on it for those like 5 states. So the case that Iowa is in right now with multiple other Midwestern states, currently there is no injunction. So in those 5 states where the injunction happened, like, they don't have to, like, it's like it's not there, and they would go with previous Title IX law. In ours, that's not the case yet, because there's not an injunction. Personally, I think there will be an injunction based on the Chevron case. I think if it gets to the Supreme Court's gonna follow that premise already. They've shown that they would frequently already. But regardless, what I wanted to do is, so that's why I first off separated this out into first and second reading. Since it's technically a law change, we could do it in one reading. But because of not only the controversy that goes along with it, but also the fact that there could be the injunction from the case, I thought it might be more beneficial to do it in multiple readings. So tonight would be the first reading, and then my hope was, to be honest, that the courts would decide this before we get to a second reading.
Do we have to do the second reading next meeting?
No, actually, I found that out afterwards.
So we could do,
So
our
we,
second reading
well,
will
we
be in
have,
January.
so basically, well, we can't go that far away.
Okay.
You have a span of which, I found out that the second reading doesn't have to be the next direct month, I do think it has to be the one after that.
So do we have to read this the first time now? Yes?
We do have to read this one now, because otherwise somebody could come back and say, like, you guys aren't following the policy. But because we put it in the first reading right now, it's in the review process, so basically, in essence, we're fine.
So how does that work if it does change in the middle of our first reading?
So if we get the injunction, you mean?
Yeah.
Then we can just stop.
So
We don't
these
have to do a
guys,
second reading.
We don't
Yeah.
have to go back.
We don't have to go back to it.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's, so that's a good legal recommendation, is they said, get the first reading done, and then give it as much time as legally allowed, so then that way you can see if the injunction happens. That's kind of what some of the advice I've given has been. And so that's what I thought we would follow our legal advice, and just say, we'll do our first reading, so we are in
The protected zone.
the protected zone, and then I will confirm, but I believe that we don't have to do the second reading the next month, but I think it's honestly like the third one. But then that gives us time too, where we can wait and see what happens in the courts. But then you've already gotten your first reading done, so for some reason the courts don't give an injunction, you could always jump right in to do the second reading and approve it or not, or whatever else.
So what happens if we don't approve it?
So, if we don't approve it, we would accept a certain amount of risk. Because what happens is you can get sued under Title IX. And so, if we don't accept it, then that risk that we take is based on whether or not, or in essence, the likelihood somebody's gonna come back and sue us for not following those rules. And they could until, if that injunction didn't happen, they could until it's resolved in court and they say, no, that's not legally overstepped, or they say yes, then they could continuously sue. And so I think what it comes down to is it's the amount of risk that the board would be willing to take, in that sense. The other aspect is you could approve some and not all of them.
But that's what I was saying, you're still following all
Yeah.
of Title IX except the amendments, right?
So, for example, the
There's some
Title
good
IX.
ones in there that they recommend.
There are some good ones, like, so for example, the pregnancy one, that's a good one. But there's, I think, for example, policy 101, or 106.1, that so you can see our policy 106 right now, that's the only Title IX policy we have in board policy. With the new Title IX, we would need all these regulation ones that go along with it. But policy 106.1, what I would tell you is that I think that our community, would not agree with the definition that they put on there of, like sex, like the sex identity pieces. That's what I would say our community would not agree with. And, you know, what happens then is if you choose not to adopt this, then there is, like I said, that level of risk, that is part of it. But like, for example, when you jump to, 106.1 R2, you know, that is the pregnancy one. You know, like, that's some protections for pregnant students that I believe we should have. And, the only thing I think you guys would probably want to change on that would be the pronoun that they use to describe a pregnant student.
Well, what's that pronoun? I missed that. I'm not up on that, all know the new pronouns.
There. So they use there instead of she or her. Indicating that it could be a different sexual identity
Yeah,
that's pregnant. So again, I don't think, the grievance procedure actually is better than it had been in the past, cause it allows, a little bit more flexibility for me as a Title IX coordinator, and it makes a little bit more sense. But, you know, again, that is just, you know, that in and of itself is one policy out of like 7. But like the first one and the second one, I would tell you our community would not support, because of, or at least a portion of it, they would not support. So, either way, this is a first reading, so nothing has to be done, or should be done this meeting. So, but I did want to just get it on there to kind of, for now, protect the district moving forward, and then, in essence, put off a decision on it until we see what the courts say. I hope that's okay with everybody.
that's perfect.
Yeah.
That's great.
Perfect.
What do your, contacts tell you? Is there stuff working way through courts or anything?
Yeah, so, like I said, I think that realistically, it's just a matter of how quickly it's getting through the courts. It's taking longer in this region to get through there. I do know that the states that are in there with Iowa are seeking an injunction, just like they did. And actually, I think there's 2 regions, so a total of like 10 states where it's not, where there is an injunction on the new Title IX rules. So 2 federal regions. But, you know, it's hard to predict when that'll actually be done. The Allers and Cooney, our legal, will send us a notice once they've gotten like to that point of knowing whether or not we're gonna get an injunction. They do a good job of sending out legal updates when there's a big thing happening, so. So that's the first review, so I just need you guys to approve the first reading of the Title IX policies.
I'll make a motion to approve the first reading of Title IX policies.
Question.
Yes,
Then, at some point, if we want to change the policies, that would be at the second reading where we.
correct, that's how we do it at least.
Okay,
Like, cause then we take it, you take the binder with you, and like, so when we go to these second readings, we're gonna go through each policy, and then we're gonna talk about the changes, cause the idea was
Just
you guys
like-
had the binder.
I remember when you guys sat down and,
Yep,
you know. and
that's what we're doing for the
Tom
second.
had a lot, like, I noticed this or something like that.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep, that's exactly what we're gonna do.
okay. I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the policy related to Title IX first readings. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, motion carries.
If
Also
you're,
review segment review.
thank you, I actually just need to grab my notes real quick. If you're okay with it, just give me 1 minute. Left them on my desk.
He's on the clock.
You know, we're going through this a lot faster than we used to.
Just
That's because
to,
there's 3 of them.
just
You know, right?
today, just today.
Come on.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Come on. So the first policy that we have on there is 403.1. I'm actually gonna pull my These are in the binder that I gave you guys last time, so if you guys don't have your binder, I can actually pull this up.
But can you re-explain what are the new policies?
Yes, so the new policies I put at the end, but the new policies that were legislative, are, I put them all at the very back of my binder, but you have those with you. So we'll get to those at the end. The policies that are on regular schedule for review were in the binder here. And so that was the binder I sent back with you. And I can, if you want, I can actually pull those up on my, screen, if you don't have your binder. Let me pull them up.
Well, you guys can use mine too. No? It's not interesting.
I don't want to, so let me just pull this up real quick. And then we'll just get to the policies as are. So the first one's 403.1. And this is employee physical examinations. All we really need for, like, I would recommend keeping it the same, the exception being the cost, how much we'll reimburse physicals, because physicals cost more now. And so,
That's not in there.
I actually didn't write the number down on that one, because I didn't,
No, it
this,
doesn't say in here. That will, oh, yeah, it does say 100, it's, sorry, it's 140.
140, thank you, that was the one I was hoping you could tell me. So I would recommend moving this to 140, or even maybe 150 to try to give a little bit of a year or two buffer, up to 150 maybe.
The handbook says one.
Oh, well, then we're gonna stick with 140, so we don't have to change the handbook. Got it. So, but that's just because we pay the bus driver physicals, but, because they have to get them every year, the physicals have just increased in cost.
And most of them go through CJ Cooper, who we have a contract with, and then they just bill us directly. Where a couple, they have the right to go to their personal doctor, their family
Sure.
doctor, or whatever, and then I reimburse them.
So that's the only change we would want on that one. And we'll approve all this at the very end, but if you have any feedback on that, let me know, because what I'm doing is I make notes. And then after you guys have approved it based on these notes, just like we did last year, the binder with all the notes is kept available for anybody that wants to come and review it. And that's kept in Harley's office, and then I make the changes.
Why don't we just update the policy to say what's reflected in the handbook?
I would like that, actually, that'd be great.
That way we're only ever,
I am 100%.
That's great.
however to say that in legalese.
That way
An
we don't
amount
have to do it twice.
Reflected in the handbook. I am all for that, I think that's a great
That
idea.
also protects you from having discrepancies.
Yes.
One says 150, one says 140, which is,
Well, and also, just so you know, in that case, what happens is board policy is what we would have to go by. And it says right in our handbook, it says that. So this is the more important one.
So then that one, we can jump past. The next one is licensed employee, individual contracts. I'm trying to remember what it was, the recommendation was there.
So this one just, I'll type up, I guess.
Yes,
is-
could you?
So this talks about how just the board president is to sign, contracts. I did get some advice from legal on other contracts, however, the board, Iowa law states that all employment contracts have to be signed by the board president and only the board president. So this isn't something that can be designated to like the vice president or the superintendent or
what
anything.
about, did we ever follow up on some of those other contracts that I had to sign that I was out of the country and we hoped that Tom could do it, but we weren't sure.
Yep.
So have we?
You've signed them all, yeah.
I know I did, but
Yeah.
just
Oh,
in case,
changing the policy?
Somewhere
Right,
going
that's-
forward,
That's what I was alluding to, so this isn't the policy we need changed on, because this talks about employment contracts. Employment contracts do have to be signed by you.
sure, but those aren't as, I mean, you do have a window, but
Yeah.
that one we had to sign for that, real estate contract was hot.
Yes, and those, in some of those, like sale of, like the sale of property, that isn't something Tom could sign, and I asked on that one. The things that like the vice president could sign, or even the superintendent, if you guys designated it, would be like just the agreements you would find in our consent agenda, like the Kirkwood agreements, the, fair, you know, our architect agreement, like those kind of things would be ones that you could designate someone else.
Yeah.
But we have a good process with DocuSign.
Well, it's a lot easier now. I
Yeah.
can't imagine how they did it back in the day
Yeah.
without all that, you know, I mean.
Yeah. The only contracts that we physically still need to sign are administration contracts.
And it could be something we could look at is changing just those designations. You know, if we were ever gonna be in a point where there'd be more common absences, I think that'd be something to look at, but that'd be something
Well,
we could do.
just like that situation there, you know, all of a sudden it jumped up at us and we needed to get it done, and it would've been nice to be able to have Tom to say.
Tom sign it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I asked Allers and Cooney on that one specifically, and I said, hey, Tom, he ran that meeting, why couldn't I have him sign it? And they said, nope, it has to be the board president.
Gotcha.
Fine.
What's that sound? Is it just like this?
The licensed employee family and medical leave, this is a change that we also was in the handbook. And this basically is gonna be a change to do a rolling 12-month for, FMLA instead of a 12-month calendar, which we currently have. We have 12-week, per year piece, and it'd be a rolling 12 months. And please clarify if I'm not stating this correctly, but
Nope,
the idea would be is we define the year as the fiscal year, July 1st to June 30th, and that's one where there's loopholes in that FMLA piece. So instead, if you do the rolling 12 months, then it's 12 months in a consecutive 12-month period, whether or not it goes past or previous.
And I'm gonna say, I had a long conversation with Allers and Cooney on the phone about this, and their recommendation would be that we start this, effective July 1st, like we actually put in here, effective July 1st, 2024. But then what they would say is in practice, we need to not start the rolling year until 2025. So essentially give everyone 12 weeks of FMLA, 7/1/2024, and then not start the rolling like look back period until 7/1/2025. I disagree with that, and I truly believe it needs to say effective 7/1/2024 with the look back period of 12 months. Which would allow me to look back at 7/1/2024, 12 months past. If you've taken 12 weeks of FMLA, you wouldn't have any then.
Why are they saying wait till January 1?
Less risk.
Yeah.
You buy yourself 6 months.
I mean, because really, it's
A
not that it's
year.
wrong. She's not saying that it's wrong.
She's just saying.
She's just saying it's safer.
Most conservative way to do it would be to do it that way. And she's probably right, but I would like to see it differently. I
And
would
we
like
have
to
people
see.
abusing it.
Do we have any FMLA claims from cost?
I don't,
So we legally can't talk to you about the FMLA claims at this point, like in the public.
But you can tell us how
Oh.
many you've had, can't you? I
Uh,
don't care who it is, or I'm just
Well,
curious.
so FMLA, maternity leave is covered under FMLA, so I guess I can say we probably have had.
as long, yeah, I was gonna say, as long as it's not identifiable, as long as it
Yeah.
doesn't identify a specific employee, we could tell you. So, yeah, we have it like that. And would there be a lot of abuse? No. Is there some? Maybe.
There's
Read.
more to the story.
I
there.
think,
Line, I can read.
right, so every policy change, it stems from something, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
So, but I would like to see it that way. I think that makes the most sense. Why would we change a policy that I can't put into place for another year? So.
So what does that mean for us? What is that?
What that basically means is if you guys, so no matter what, we're gonna move it to the rolling 12-month. But what that means is if you're willing to give the July 1st, starting effective July 1st, 2024, then basically she can start doing the rolling 12-month look back now. Again, that just adds a little bit of risk for the employment side of things. Because then if, you know, what that comes down to is it's honestly, like, I don't, you've probably dealt with this with unemployment maybe, But the idea is when you have the unemployment claims, sometimes you could do everything by the book. And it just depends on the judge you get, like whether or not they say, yeah, you were right or wrong on the unemployment piece, and you're gonna have to pay unemployment or not. Sometimes it's just a matter of what judge you get. And, you know, that's kind of the same thing here. Well, you know, if you gave a 12-month grace period, it's very unlikely that any judge is going to do anything. On the same token, with the rolling 12-month, I personally would think that most judges are reasonable enough to see why you would do that and see that that's a reasonable thing to do. But there could be a judge that'd be like, no, I think you needed to give him notice. At which point, then you'd lose any kind of case in that sense.
So FMLA, just high level, what it is it's job protected leave for medical or family medical reasons. So essentially, what would be happening is like, if today, if I had somebody, an employee who I'd used 12 weeks in the last 12 months, they would have no leave available. Where, as of July 1st, where the past practice would be as of July 1st, they'd have 12 weeks available. So it makes a huge difference. So it's not job protected leave.
So they could end their 12 weeks, June 30th, and then start another 12 weeks.
Correct. So essentially, in 24 months, they'd have 24 weeks. It's a lot. And so, yeah, rolling is more common, and it's probably what in my opinion, every company should have, is a rolling policy. Ours has always been fiscal. It's been very hard to manage, and I think this will be a better policy in the future for us. But yes, the risk that Allers was trying to emphasize to me is that you're essentially just like changing it up on those all employees, but that's your right. This is your board policy, so there's nothing saying you can't change a policy. Just like you changed $100 reimbursement to $140.
We changed our vision policy overnight.
Right, exactly. So I just wanted to be very clear with you guys that would be my intent on how to procedurally follow this policy. And there are two policies. The way we write it out, we have licensed and what do you guys call them? Classified, licensed and classified, so we would just make them say the same thing.
Is it a different term for?
It's like basically you have your licensed employees, like teachers and things like that, they have to have a license to do their job, versus your associates, your cooks and things, they don't need a license, so they're certified.
Classified.
Classified, not certified, classified.
Certified.
Certified would be the licensed
Would be
ones
the
again.
licensed.
So it seems like, so all of these, should they be in here?
They were in the first binder that I
The
did.
first binder, okay.
Cause these ones were not legal changes, they all required 2 readings, so I sent them back with you guys in the binder from June.
And so the ones we have now
Are the legal ones that only require 1 reading, cause
Okay.
all it is legal change.
okay. And the ones that are in the binder,
Are all these first ones that, are a regular review, plus the ones that we wanted to review that are not legal changes. So those 400 series at the beginnings were ones we had recommendations for. The 8 and 900s are a regular review. Regularly scheduled review.
and this is the second reading for everything.
So in essence, like, these will all get approved however we rewrite them tonight. And so really the big question here is, do you wanna also add in the effective July 1st for these? Cause this will be the same kind of request we had in the other ones.
I have no problem.
Yeah, not wrong.
Okay. Okay.
As long as board policy doesn't say that it's,
Say what?
as long as board policy doesn't say anything different,
Handbook, you mean?
or the handbook.
No, you actually just approved the handbook to say what we were hoping you would approve here.
Yeah.
But
And we-
obviously, if you didn't.
If we didn't, we'd just go back and change it.
Yeah.
Licensed employee bereavement leave, So in this case, what we are talking about is, who they can grant the leave for, like who you can get leave for. And, sorry, it's, the occurrence, I should say. So what we have on here now is like 5 days per occurrence. So, and we also have it for family, relatives, friends, and you can do up to 5 days per occurrence.
I'm just gonna come out and say it, we have some employees that are abusing this,
Well,
and we
my-
need to put a stop to it.
My question for this is what does the policy say? Does it define family?
No,
This is what the policy said, can you pull it up?
yeah, sorry, oh,
Yeah, because I have
It's terrible.
we thankfully further define for where I work what family is. Because, you know,
oh, this
people's
is the wrong
Well,
one.
this-
second cousin would pass away, which,
And this
I mean,
says
you were close to your second cousin, but
friends, that's what really gets you here, is, it says immediate family, relatives, or
Friends.
friends. You can claim anyone as your friend,
I
I
would
can't
just-
prove that that's not your friend.
we confined it down, I don't know about you guys, but we brought it down to immediate family, and then we defined what immediate family was.
And
I mean, and I wouldn't even have a problem leaving it family, relatives, friends, as long as it was just 5 days total.
What's the difference between family and relatives?
What says
The immediate family, sorry, immediate family, relatives, or friends, bereavement leave may be granted. And what we have it in the policy, the way it's written, it's basically, you can have 5 days per occurrence.
it's 5 days per funeral you can
But
find.
it says may be granted. May be granted.
No, real.
What does that mean?
It says may be granted for no more than 5 days.
It does say bereavement leave may be granted, you're right, I mean, we could say no,
Yeah,
but,
you can say no.
but, well, how can you say no?
What it
You're
does is it puts you in a sticky situation, because if I'm like, yeah, I don't really think you're friends with that person, I'm gonna say no. But then this other person that comes that's more trustworthy, and you're gonna say yes, cause I'm pretty sure you are friends with that
I
person.
understand, but if I have a girlfriend, are they family?
I think what we're trying, so, I don't know that we necessarily want to define who you can be gone for, but maybe how many.
That's really more what I'm just asking is, so then that way we don't end up with 25 days of bereavement leave.
Yeah, we want that.
That's, so we're just wanting like, instead of 5 days per occurrence, just like 5 days. You get up to 5 days of bereavement leave a year.
So just for sake of argument, let's say my whole family gets wiped out. Is that 25 days straight? I mean, is that how it reads?
That's how it would read, yeah, you'd get 25 days, yes, per occurrence.
I mean,
If you had
it's
5 family
technically, I mean,
members.
it's technically would be one occurrence, so,
But per
Per
occurrence is,
per
Like-
person.
yeah,
Okay.
per person.
So in that case, we can, I mean, that's.
Just
that's-
limit the
that's
total
pretty big.
number of days.
You know, I mean, we're gonna, like, it's up to the manager's discretion, right? I mean,
Yeah,
Well, and beyond
But-
that, like, if there was a
basically,
catastrophic event, we would come up with ways, I mean, we also have a policy that says that we can have other employees donate their leave and stuff like that, and so there are ways we can come up with paid leave for people who really have tragedies.
Sure.
yeah, and they
It's-
would.
We want to come up with a way to eliminate the abuse of this policy.
Yeah.
So that's leaving it way open for abuse. I think that when we talk about leaving it to the discretion of the manager, and that also goes both ways too, but we don't have to approve all of that, you know?
No,
And
you do
maybe
not.
we could, and if you could put maybe a sentence in about that, like saying, I mean, just maybe more reiterate that bereavement leave isn't automatically granted and it's at the discretion of the superintendent or whatever, I don't know, but it needs to be something more that we can lean on.
Yeah, I'm good with what you're proposing. I just think that we just need to be compassionate enough to say.
And you could-
There's a big deal.
Right?
5 days, I've lived through a tragedy in 5 days.
And what I do have though too is I have the discretion to approve different kinds of leave in that kind of a situation. Like you guys have given me the discretion. If there was a serious situation, I could approve some sick leave for them to be gone longer, for
Or
like mental
unpaid,
support,
or even unpaid.
or even unpaid. You know, like I can approve different kinds of leave but then, and that'd be after they've used 5 bereavement days. You know, so the idea would be is, what you would just get is, you know, you might have a person that is taking 3 days for a friend that passed away.
Mhm.
I mean, I've had friends that passed away. I didn't take 3 days, it took a day.
You don't get it, I mean, that's just not how it works.
Mhm. And so that's more of, you know, when you realize you only have 5 days, you're not gonna take 3 for more of an acquaintance, honestly, than you would have, like, cause then you're like, well, what if something did happen where I wanna use those 4 days for a close family member? You know, but then they're free to use those for like a close family member, knowing that if an extenuating circumstance happened, there's flexibility in policy for me to approve different kinds of leave.
Yeah. To me,
I'm all for that, I just don't want anybody to think that we have a moral compass that is like, if you use your 5 days, that's all you get. You
No,
know,
there's other ways I could approve for them to get leave if needed, but then it would be more of a, this is an extenuating circumstance, like I had a brother pass away, now my mother passed away,
yeah.
that kind
Well,
of thing.
and the other thing is, if you read the policy, it is a little bit gray, because it says, at the beginning, it says, the licensed employee's immediate family, relatives, or friends, bereavement leave may be granted. Then it goes on to say, bereavement leave may be granted to a licensed employee for no more than 5 days per occurrence for the death of a member of the immediate family. So, I don't know, maybe the intent when they wrote this was for immediate family, you can have 5 days per occurrence. But then for everyone else, it's like 1 day, I don't know, like, it doesn't really explain
I think
it.
if you're willing to be creative in assigning different types of leave, I really think that we should take the friends part out of it. If they really are that passionate about a friend, there should be some way to work that out.
So instead of limiting the 5 days, you just say.
Well, I
get friends.
mean, I think that's just, I don't know, a good starting point, I guess. 'Cause I mean, if you're looking for tools to try to get rid of some of the abuse of this policy, then,
Change friend to significant up, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mhm.
But the other thing though
Something
is,
like that.
you know, one employee somehow has 15 aunts. I can't argue that you're, I
but
don't know.
then, but then they should only be able to, so yes, I believe the policy is too open and it needs to be changed in some manner.
Yeah.
I think either saying 5 days total for the year, or what I was saying, you only have it as immediate family and you define family, it's the same thing. In a sense, you're limiting them, because the other part of that is people are given PTO
Mhm.
for all sorts of different reasons, and, you know, I had an employee the other day who had a relative pass away that did not meet the criteria. We pulled up the policy together, cause I couldn't remember, and we said, okay, I'm just gonna take some PTO then, it's okay.
Mhm. And they can have up to 4 personal days a year.
and I think if there's pieces like that can help out in that type of situation, I think we've refined the definition of what classifies family or whatever. 'Cause I don't know, to me that makes more sense.
If the only thing you changed was choking it down to 5 days total, then people have to really, you know,
That alone's gonna change a bunch of it.
yeah.
I think, yeah, and I'm trying to remember, cause I feel like, legal had suggested one of these things, I thought they said, I have to pull back up her email, but I feel like she had said the 5 days total, but, well, if you guys are okay with that, I'd like to start with the 5 days,
Total.
5 days total.
Yeah,
And then if we
can
need to
leave-
narrow,
Leave the description the way it is then?
and then
Or-
if it doesn't work, then I'll bring it back to you.
yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I guess I don't, yeah.
That's
I
fine
think-
with me.
Yeah, one way or the other, I think is kinda how we need to look at it.
That's the immediate need.
And so, just so you know, like practice wise, I always load 5 days of bereavement into everyone's like leave bank, right? Knowing that they obviously actually get more. There's 99% of people do not go over it, so I don't think limiting it to 5 is going to be that. It's not gonna hurt people.
like I said, if
So
you.
we only have 100 employees, right?
Yeah, that's close.
So if you use some discretion, on a major, that would be totally different.
Yeah, and there, like I said, there's a policy actually about that, about catastrophic, that one, so.
414 is the next one, I'm gonna pull it up, this is on leave, and this is just the way that it's written, and I'll let Harley talk about this a little bit more, cause it'll just make it easier, cause it's the vacation,
Oh, yeah, can I get the handbook then?
yeah. And,
So essentially, can you pull up my recommend, do you have my recommendation?
update to fix an issue in this class of employee is originally hired, and it will align it with the calendar.
Yep, so
So,
vacation leave only applies to, year-round employees, so vacation leave doesn't apply to teaching staff, it applies to me and Will, Teresa, and our custodial staff, 'cause
and
so-
Jolene.
and Jolene, yes. So what's unique about those positions are they don't necessarily run with the calendar, like the fiscal year, right? You can hire a custodian anytime, they're on so what's really hard is when the policy says, like, once they've, or, if they've completed this many years of employment when I issue the contract. Well, that doesn't make sense. If I issue the contracts in July and you were hired in August, you don't get it till like a whole nother 2 years. But if you were in October and you completed the year, so I want it to be just based off of the time that you've actually worked here. Like, once you've worked here for 6 months, you get 3 days. Once you've worked here for a year, you get 1 week. Once you've worked here for a second year, you get 2 weeks, 6 or more, 3 weeks, and then it's maxed out there.
And that clock starts then at the beginning of the.
The day of hire.
Right, but I mean, once, okay, so they've been here, they get hired in the middle of the year.
Yep,
Okay, so they work a year,
yep.
okay? At what point do they all get on the same kind of schedule? At the,
Once it maxes out at 6, right?
Yeah, yep. So what I'm asking is it to not run off of a contract, like, I don't even wanna put vacation in the contract anymore, just like your guys' is probably vacation works where you work. I just want it to be like date of hire, and then it will renew at 7/1,
okay,
but I would, effective their date of hire, be able to give them,
I see what you're saying.
yeah,
I
so,
got you.
cause otherwise it's like you don't hire everyone at the same time of the year. It works with teaching staff, but it doesn't with custodial staff,
Sure.
so. But otherwise, like, the amounts given for time completed, it's all the same, I just want it to work differently, so.
Is that easier to manage for you?
So much easier. I don't have calendar reminders, like, so, yeah.
Question,
Mhm.
do you guys ever change your holidays? So it's New Year's, Good Friday, Memorial Day. Basically, this is another thing of, do we want to have it either in the policy or the handbook?
I mean, honestly, those things are always easy in the handbook, I don't think we've really changed the holidays, though.
Not since I've been here. And well, the way it says 2 days for Christmas is like, gives a lot of leniency. as
That's the
to-
other thing, is like, there's 2 days for Thanksgiving, and that one's a lot easier because it's roughly the same. But 2 days for Christmas, I
We
had
did
to
have-
tell my employees which days last year,
Mhm.
this is the day and this is the day for Christmas.
We did have an issue with that this last Christmas, but I did already say, like, it's gonna be these 2 days next time. And usually, yeah, usually it's Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, but with the way it fell near the weekend this time, that was where the confusion came in. So I'm hoping that, but that happens every like 4 or 5 years.
It's crappy again this year, it's Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yep.
Yeah, I
You guys
don't,
get 2 days?
I'm otherwise okay, I'm happy with this otherwise, so. next one is just a reiteration of the FMLA, but just for classified, so are you guys okay with the same changes for classified?
Mhm.
And then the next one would be the same, it's bereavement, but for classified versus licensed, are you okay with the same there?
I was thinking less bereavement.
Less bereavement per hour. Does anyone agree with Dan? Okay.
Take an official vote here. Actually, you guys get 5 days, we only get 3. That's pretty good.
For bereavement?
Yeah,
Yeah, but, what's the PTO?
paid time off.
Like, no, but what's you, like, cause you guys, they generally would have, is it more flexible for
Oh, yeah.
PTO? Yeah,
Like, I could have someone tomorrow
yeah.
say, hey, I'm not gonna come in
Yeah.
today.
They classify it as PTO unplanned or
Yeah, and we,
PTU.
we're usually more, or we're a lot less flexible in
Mm.
like, you know, personal days, for example, we start sending things out to staff in like February, and then say, you know, we're getting full on paid, you can't take any more personal days in, on Fridays and Mondays in May anymore, because
Mhm.
we have too many stops. So then it's like, you better, like, they have to put in their Friday or Monday, that if they wanna take one in May, back in like October. Cause we run short on stops.
Yeah, we're very flexible. I tell my folks, I'll treat you like an adult, you treat this like your business. So if I have someone starting to abuse, like, I just can't count on when I know if they're gonna be there that day or not, then I have to talk to them.
Yeah. And I was gonna say, and I feel like that's, I think where, you know, you don't need as much bereavement leave if they can be flexible with their PTO and,
Do you have sick leave on top of PTO, or is that part of it?
Just PTO is everything, just your vacation, your sick leave, whatever you wanna use it for.
if you're okay with it, since you guys don't have your binders for these 800, 900 series, I'm just gonna pull it up on the screen if there was a change we were gonna recommend. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. For building, objectives of building and sites, that's the 800, I don't recommend any changes for that. The buildings and sites long-range planning, this is basically now, in essence, I'm taking this and putting it as part of our 5-year strategic plan, cause this talks about the responsibility of the superintendent to provide information, including but not limited to enrollment projections, education program requirements, and long-term needs for building, will be discussed and determined by the board. And so, that's where I'm putting them in 5-year, so I don't feel there's a need to change that. Surveys, the same thing, we actually just did a survey. And, I made that recommendation to you guys as well, that was the de novo one, facility survey. Educational specifications for building and sites. Basically, this is also part of that 5-year plan that we're going through, where we're talking about, here's the fiscal goals first, to see whether or not we have the funding to do any of these other excess things, past maintenance stuff. So that's a lot of like educational specifications, you know, financial resources available for project, functional use made of the rooms, any specialized needs that might be there, so. Site acquisition, and I'm gonna tell you that most of these I have no changes on, just to be honest, because they're all about the buildings and sites. So I wouldn't say that there's too much, but the 803.1 is gonna be the first one that we'll get to where I had a recommended change, unless you had one.
No, these are not fun ones.
They're really not, and I mean, honestly, these ones are, a lot of the time, really part of state law anyway, there's a lot of code that goes along with these when it comes to buildings and sites, so there's not a big need to change things and you don't really want to. The maintenance schedule piece, Corey actually makes that for me, so it's it's listed in here as responsibility of the superintendent, but I really truly let Corey make the maintenance schedule. And the idea is supposed to be that people in a building are supposed to notify the principal, who in turn is supposed to notify me. To be very honest, oftentimes, they just notify Corey.
And they put in a ticketing system a couple years back, but it's worked really well.
Yes.
Through email.
So that actually is, it's a good paper trail if we ever needed to see it. But I do see all the approvals, so when they come through, my biggest thing, and this is something I talked about with you guys before, is making a better system when an approval comes in for a partial payment. Because all I see is like, you know, if they say like Hawkeye Electric for $3,000, and they might say it was for this project, then I'm gonna say, okay, that seems to be what it was supposed to be. We were gonna do that, approve it. Then I get another bill for like another $3,000 from Hawkeye Electric. So like, we're working on how to write that in there, so it's like 40% of. You know, and I actually had the engineer for the playground project, when he built us the first part of it, I had him put a percentage completion that I could put in for Harley to see, along with like his bill for the first part of the work he did. You know, it's just 40% of the work I'm
Do
doing.
you guys not have terms or anything?
I don't think so.
We don't work on terms mostly. I actually was talking to Bethany before the meeting on this, and like, it's just, we pay them when we can pay them.
Yeah.
Really?
It's been board approved.
Oh, yeah,
I
we
mean, you
totally
can't
work on
say-
terms.
I mean, you can't tell me I have to pay you tomorrow or net 10 because
And we actually, we
I
do tell
can't get it.
people that work for us in advance, you will never get paid prior to a board meeting.
in our contract with Apex, it's actually in there that they have to have the pay apps to us, like the Monday before the board, the Monday before the third Monday, the second one, I don't know. It's written in there that they
Is that just
know.
because that's how the school system works, like?
We can't pay bills without your approval.
I can pay bills
Well-
in an emergency situation with Will's approval,
An emergency, but generally we can't pay them without you guys' approval.
but that's like, for instance, why we needed you to approve neighbor insurance and that bill. I had you approve that so they could pay us 7/1.
So would that be something that would even be considered ever, having terms?
To be honest, we do it in the bigger projects in that sense, but we don't, for the smaller ones, the only thing that I'll be adding on is the not to exceed things. But the time limit terms usually just don't work out well, because, I don't know if.
Ours isn't time, like, for example, say we have a $100,000 project, our terms are typically 40, 30, 20, 10.
Oh, yeah, no, they, the reason we don't do that is because they want those terms at a set time frame within the project, and oftentimes it doesn't align with when they need to get paid.
But,
If that was the
so,
case.
but beyond that, if there was, like, say there was an agreement between us and like, a project, if you guys approved the full amount up front, like you said, these are the terms, and we approve them, I would pay based off of that, even without waiting for the board meeting. As long as you have approved it at one point. Does that make sense? But then be on a project by project basis.
I was just thinking, honestly, my mode of thinking was going to fix your problem of the two bills coming in. Things were just on terms, it wouldn't matter, so.
It's true. And I can talk to Corey about that too and see, but what
You
he.
guys have a system you're working on? I guess.
Yeah, the one we're working on is just, cause when it comes through the system for me to approve, I know all the projects and what we have budgeted, but I just need to make sure I know if this is not the full amount. Cause I go back and check comparatively, like, you know, if I approve them to purchase set amount for furniture in their classroom, when I see it come up in the system for me to approve, I look at what it's supposed to be and I look at the price, was that what I approved? And then I'll check it, approve it to go to Harley. If, the big issue just always comes is when the people that are billing me put it in multiple bills, and then when Corey puts it in, or some other staff member, and they don't put in like, this is 40% of it, or this is 60% of it, then I get caught unaware. And that's, like I said, that's not their fault, it's just how it's been done, and so,
Like, it creates a pain for even our big company, I mean, it just,
yeah.
those partial payments when there's been approvals, and it just makes it tougher. You know,
It
we
does.
have to go through a whole nother process to get partial payments. So I'll even schedule them, cause our vendors will like pay, or they'll bill out monthly,
Yeah,
you know, so I'll even schedule work so I miss like one billing cycle, so they get it all done in 1 month, whether it be 2 trips or 3 trips.
oh,
But they're
gotcha.
still getting it all done within that monthly billing cycle, cause I won't have to go through that hassle.
I'm not a fan of partial payments, but I do like the idea of terms, I just don't know if it'll work, so I'll talk to Corey, and I would, yeah.
With a term payment, would you be concerned that you would pay more before like substantial completion type thing?
I would be concerned that we pay more before they do the work.
Like the work doesn't align with the term of the
Yeah.
payment schedule.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I mean, I have yet to have anybody need a schedule in this project. The only, I was like, in any project, but, so, yeah. The only group I've ever worked with that's met all the deadlines in a schedule they came up with were the Fries. The only group I've ever worked with.
They live and die by their schedule.
Yeah, if people were all like them, I would have no worries.
As a contractor, though, it kinda sucks working for them. 'Cause it rains outside. It does rain in their office, but it rains outside. You know, you just,
All of a sudden your timeline's.
exactly, yeah.
Oh. The 802.2, I think this is an old one, because you guys, prior to me even getting here, improvements not to exceed 20, I think, is the amount that was on there, and I think this is the old one I printed off. Isn't
For you to
it,
pay.
the superintendent can approve up to 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys approved that, prior. I think I approved it.
I was thinking it was 25.
Well, you can up it if you want, now's the time.
I was thinking we changed it to 25, from 5 to 25 or
You
something.
actually might be, I have it written down, 1 second.
I was gonna say, the one that's posted, I printed these from the website, so I think I need to update the website.
Why was the ads?
25.
It was
I
25,
have over
okay.
25, it's, just so you know, it's on my to-do list, every time I check bills, anything over 25, I have to make sure it's approved by you. It's 25, yes.
Hey, Will,
Yes,
the AC shut off at 7. Can you turn it back on?
yes. I'm actually gonna manually turn that back on real quick.
You swimming over there?
I'm like, about 20 minutes ago, I'm like, man, why am I so hot? I'm like, oh, the AC shut off.
Good start.
There it goes.
Have to be exposed.
Okay. The other one's in emergency repairs, that if there's something that absolutely needed to be fixed that is gonna be in excess of the state limit, I can do it in an emergency, but then I have to go verify that it has been an emergency.
What qualifies as emergency?
It actually has to be approved by the AEA that it was an emergency. And so then I would basically approve it, and then I'd go take it to the AEA and say, and you say that, yes, this was an emergency, and that's why I didn't take it to the board. Capital assets management system, actually, don't wanna touch that.
I was just thinking, don't touch what's not good.
Yep, so I was like, that works really well, she's got it all down, and so I don't wanna touch it. Just to say, I would recommend we don't touch it.
That would be your recommendation.
This next board policy is going to be our building and sites adaptations for persons with disability. And, that is specifically why we have to do this is part of the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, but this is the policy that explains it, of why we are having to make that adjustment to our playground. Whenever we do any kind of improvement, we have to make it ADA accessible. So when we did that playground initially, that's when we should have done it. Vandalism, 802.6. That just basically says if somebody vandalizes the district, they're subject to punishment from the district. Energy conservation in 802.7.
Ironically, that's why our air turns off.
Right, turns off because we're not in the building anymore for our energy conservation policy, 802.7. And we are also supposed to keep windows and doors properly closed, depending on the weather, or open. Or open, for energy conservation. Lease, sale, or disposal of school district building sites, this is actually the one that is changed. And I have that, you'll have that in your policy, if you wanna jump to it. It's in one of the, legal ones, so it's in this, well, yeah, it would've been this one, yeah. Yep, and so it's 803.2, and you can just jump to that. And basically, this is part of, like, they were talking about who you can sell it to, and I'm just gonna put reference, primer in the back. You can see what they changed on there, so let me just kinda jump to that.
Are you getting rid of the $5,000 threshold?
Yeah.
I mean, it does,
Like just remove it, or you wanna up it, or? what do you-
no, I'm content with the $5,000, I just saw that the IASB one doesn't say that. I think it probably was put into place to say like, I mean, real property such as like, I don't know. I can't think of any real no, bus isn't real property. Only real property would be like sales off campus. So I guess you're not ever gonna sell anything that's less than $5,000, that's real property. It's literally real
Yeah, we
property.
wouldn't.
Like real estate.
Real estate.
Real estate.
Land, yeah.
So we could get rid
They
of
talk about
5,000.
schools constructed, students constructed buildings, like, I'm assuming sheds,
That could, yes, you're right, that could fall in there.
so that, cause they specifically put in the policy,
So I almost think you can
will
put that
not
on.
apply to the sale of student constructed buildings.
Not be used for.
So we wouldn't need a public hearing requirement if it's a student constructed building.
Correct. That's like sometimes they'll build the sheds and shop and sell it.
So this says including students. Where are you reading that at, Dan?
803.2, kind of in the middle right here, I believe.
Of the primary back.
It's right in the new highlighted part in the primer,
Yep.
yeah? And so it says, and this policy will not apply to the sale of student constructed
What's
buildings.
the last paragraph say, cause this does say including.
In the last
Oh,
one,
no, they got rid of it, okay.
yep,
Perfect.
yep. So I printed this before the primer came out, so this is in the back in the new edition that I gave you. Or if you put it in the front. Bless you. And I did actually have to state that I did miss, because I didn't change the color on it, but 801.3, I think it was 801.3, that had just a thing where basically we have to post information. So, I'm gonna write that on here too, to see the reference one in the back. But that, we have to post, information about our buildings on our district website, that's already up and on it. So just to let you know, but that was a law, because basically they're trying to make it so it's like a private school could come in and buy a property, and in the past, like there were not, and so then that way also the private, people that want to start a private school can see if there are any vacant buildings available, that they can try to put a bid on. Because then if they know there's a vacant building, they put a bid on it, then really they're liable now to sell it. So, that's,
Makes me think of the old Sierra.
right, that's exactly what just happened, they tried to do all the sale right before this came into effect on July 1st.
They
So-
succeeded.
And they did succeed,
Yeah.
they succeeded. So, jumping on to the next one, after the 803.2.
That's great.
Well, those are all the legal ones, so I'm still going through these other ones. Facilities inspections, there's nothing to, change on here, cause that's just regular one. District emergency operation plans, 804.2, this is where we talk about that, emergency plan and why we have to have one. That's what 804.2 says, it also states what's in the plan, like the general things you have to put in there. Wouldn't wanna change that. Asbestos containing material, that is a state law, or that's a law, federal law, we can't change that.
Real quick, does it say anything in there, or do we know in our building where if there is any asbestos?
Yes, there is, and we do know where it is. Our custodians, because we have asbestos in the building, our district custodians and maintenance have to do an asbestos training yearly, online, every year at the beginning of the year. Because we have asbestos, even though they don't have to do anything per se with it. they're
Right.
still required to.
And is it just areas that we just can no longer get out or something?
Correct. Well, without extreme cost. So like, for example, in the nurse's office, the bathroom there, we had talked about making that accessible because it's the nurse's office. Well, it was talked about when you guys were doing the project, the building project itself. It was in the original plans. But when the cost cutting had to come through, That was a significant cost, because that's all asbestos underneath there. So you'd have to do all that expensive asbestos cleaning in order to do that, plus the additional cost of an ADA compliant bathroom. So in the cost that you cut, that was one cut. If we don't do any project there, we're gonna have to replace the asbestos part.
Yeah.
So that was the reason. So we do have some areas with how build the old parts of the building are, we do still have places with asbestos. Yes. 804.6 is the brand new policy, per se. It's not brand new for us, I mean, like, it's been a policy forever, but we don't have that. And we should adopt that, because we should have adopted it once we had cameras on the building premises. We only have like 8. Now we're gonna have like 50 cameras on the building and outside the building. So it's more important than ever to make sure that we have our use of recording devices on school property.
Pull that up.
We don't have it on our board policy, so I'd have to pull it up on the, let me see if I can do it real quick on my drive. I might have to just get it on,
ASB website or
yeah,
something?
I'd probably have to go, because that's where I printed all off of Assembly. So let me see if I. Yeah, I'll get it on Assembly real quick. Sorry, I just have to go through a lot of different sites to get it up there. And it always opens a new tab every time. It's 8.4.6. So here is 804.6. It just talks about reporting on the site. And the first part is, it's basically stating that we do agree with using recording devices for the safety of students and the community. And, but we also state that we're not gonna put any recording devices where there's the reasonable expectation of privacy. Basically like locker rooms, bathrooms, things like that. There'll be no recording devices in there. Then there'll also be they'll be maintained and kept in compliance with FERPA, which is the Privacy Rights of Families. And so what that means is, like, for example, now that we're gonna have these cameras everywhere, we obviously are gonna use them for discipline, right? So if somebody does something wrong, we can see it on camera. People are not allowed to see the camera except, like, they are not allowed to see any recordings outside of the specific people that I designated that can see it. Nobody else can see the recordings except if the recording was used specifically as the evidence to discipline a student. So, like, for example, if I have 2 kids and one kid gets punched by another kid, and that one kid, though, didn't do anything, the other one just came up and punched him. So then I'm punishing that one kid that threw the punch. The family of the kid that got punched actually is not allowed legally to see the video. But because, unless I'm giving that kid a consequence for some reason, based on the video. Versus the kid that threw the punch, if the family doesn't believe the kid threw the punch, they can see the video. At that time, though, they can only see the part that the student was involved in, and I have to make every effort to blur out all other students' faces. They are not allowed a recording of it. It wouldn't be sent to them. They can only physically come in and request to see it. That's it. That's FERPA. And so, we would save a copy of that, though, if it was used for discipline. If it's not used for discipline, it has to be deleted from our system in 30 days. So, like, for example, if somebody wants to see something from 40 days ago, it'll no longer be on the cloud. So we couldn't do it. Because FERPA requires that we delete all those recordings after 30 days, unless we're saving them specifically for an incident that occurs within the building. And then again, only those designated by the superintendent is allowed to view them for that privacy reason.
So you could have, oh yeah, we had a fight September 1st,
Yep.
2023 in the lunchroom. You could still have that report.
I'm required to keep that recording if it was used for discipline, because it's now part of a student record. Cannot keep it if it's not part of like a record, for FERPA reasons. And this goes into that, this kind of explains generically, like, we're following FERPA, we're keeping student privacy. And then it
You would
also,
have to go physically select a certain time frame of video.
And download it.
And save it.
mm-hmm, download and save it, and then we would save it. I keep it in a drive folder that when I did those things, I kept it in a drive folder that I specifically had access to, and only the other administrators that could have access to that. Because that's where I kept all the records, because I'd have a written report, all the evidence pieces in there, any statements, all that in one folder within a disciplinary drive, shared drive, that the only people on it were like myself, the superintendent, the assistant principal. That was when I was a principal, so same kind of thing would happen here.
So who's deleting those files?
They automatically are deleted after 30 days as part of our system. Mm-hmm. Yep, so they're aware of, Hawkeye, all the different companies are aware of what the law requires. So they all delete them automatically when they need to be. So this does that. This also has the non-district recording piece in there. And what that basically says is the use of non-district owned recording devices on school property and at school events will be regulated. So that means we have control over whether or not we would allow recordings to happen, personal recordings or business recordings for any reason. And that's really what that's saying. And it's to protect other students' privacy. Like, for example, we have 6 students who have filled out the form where they do not want any recordings or pictures or anything, media of their kids anywhere. And they have that right. So they filled that out, we have that form on file. We can manage it, and the reason then we can say you are not allowed to do that is because we have to manage that.
It doesn't,
Additionally, we can do it because we also, if we believe it to be a disruption or something within the school day, we can also manage it that way.
but that form doesn't trump them being on our security cameras, does it?
No, because that's not public. Yep, and so that legally, we still have them on our security cameras because we already follow FERPA there anyway. Yep. So, because we have limited access to the cameras. And anybody that has access to the cameras, or when we get this new system and when we do the training, I'll also be going over again legal requirements, who can see, when they can see, yada yada. And that will be, staff cannot see, unless for some reason they're in there as part of the discipline piece too. So that policy, we don't have that at all. I would just request that we add that policy. We should have had it when we first got the cameras in. Radon mitigation is on there. I just wanted to make sure, I don't think there was anything else there. Yeah, that one's just a regular review. We don't need to do anything with that. That was updated last year, I believe, actually, with their radon law. So that's all in there. I think we actually adopted the regulation last year. That gets us to 900. I didn't include, you'll notice in the description there, just before the recording devices, I didn't include 804.5 and 804.5E1 because those were both updated last year as part of legal changes. So they weren't required for a 5-year review. Oh, actually, let me double check. Maybe there wasn't no radon. I don't think there was actually. I feel like there was not. Let me double check. Yeah, there was no more radon mitigation because it was already updated. Yes, 900. That's just generically what our objectives for community relations. I don't have any changes recommended for that. Public examination of school district records, I don't have any recommendation changes for that. Basically talks about when's reasonable for people to request public records and the length of time, and when we would charge them. Like if they have a really excessive request, we might charge them if it's gonna take a long time for us to manage and get all that material together. Or if there's gonna be, like, there was one time people requested data that we didn't have on hand, so I had to, and this wasn't here, this was in Spencer, but I had to take a long time to put together a lot of data and compile it. So then we charged them a small fee, because honestly, I had to spend 2 days doing it. You know, but if it's a quick request where I just gotta look up a few things, then I will send it to them, and they're reasonably allowed to expect it in a certain amount of time, unless I'm gone, like for vacation, or something like that. And then they should be able to reasonably expect it after I get back. That's kind of what all this says. Yeah, I've had no bereavement. Actually, I gave myself bereavement after Disney, no.
You keep your wallet.
No, right, that's what I really did. News media relations, basically, it really does say, you know, please send any news media to me. The only two people legally that can speak for the school district are the board president and myself, according to board policy, unless we change that. But generally, like, if there's a news media release, the only two, it's not to say that you guys couldn't talk, per se, but realistically, you should go through that. But technically, the only two that can officially speak for the district, per board policy, are the board president and the superintendent. So if some issue were to happen. What?
I'll do that.
That sounds good. And that actually, so that was actually, well, I don't know if that was talked about in 902.2 as well or not. Yeah, I generally would tell you that if I ever can, I'm gonna prefer to send out a statement, a written statement, versus doing any kind of news conference, just as an FYI. The next one, 902.3, is news releases should be the superintendent. 902.4 is gonna be our live broadcast or videotaping. And this one, basically, this will probably become an issue, I'm gonna be honest, now that we have Huddle. Because currently, what our board policy states is that anybody can live broadcast as long as it doesn't become an undue burden. Well, because we have Huddle and Booster Club gets revenue from Huddle, they're gonna want people to actually watch Huddle. And so I can imagine that if somebody starts live streaming on their own while Huddle's going on, that could be an issue.
So what about Game Changer?
I mean, it might be the same, I guess, because the Game Changer app, you can just, if I remember right, you can just live stream straight from the app, right?
I think so.
That's what I thought, yeah.
That is really cool, I mean,
Yeah.
that's awesome. But I
So-
don't
It's
think-
not an actual video feed though,
Oh, yeah.
No,
it's
it is,
live.
it's live, you can live stream from Game Changer, I'm pretty sure, I mean, I used it for, like, scheduling for my kids' soccer team, but I think they have live streaming there.
Yeah,
So
I
that's,
watched the first half of the softball season from Ontario.
Yeah.
That's great.
so we say, like, our policy says that's fine, as long as it doesn't put undue burden on the school district for any reason. But what I would say is, like, for football particularly now, if we start doing more live streaming and other events, any event where the Booster Club is gaining revenue from that,
Yeah, they're not doing, I don't think Huddle's doing, they're not doing anything with Huddle on for softball.
yeah, and so I don't think there'll be an issue there, but as they start expanding that, I would see that becoming more of an issue. But so football would be the only time I would see it being an issue now. 'cause that's
Huddle's
only-
great too, I mean, just pick your poison, you can.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, and I think, like I said, it just comes down to, what I'm dreading is this idea of if we ever have to have NIL start getting into the high school level.
It's coming.
I mean, but on the same token, we don't make enough money, so I don't know, we're always in the red.
It's like, it won't be you, it won't be the district paying.
That's true, we'll be
Boosters
Booster
and
Club
whatnot,
and
yeah.
stuff. We start paying these, we're gonna be able to recruit just like the private schools. Look at our NIL collective at Alburnett.
It's coming, I'm telling you.
The swarm. actually be the pirate ship.
Maybe not in Alburnett.
Yeah, I know,
I think
well,
it's probably already happening in Chicago with some of the bigger cities.
I was just saying, I'm sure they'll probably eventually get there. I don't even know. So this one, code 903, or sorry, board policy 903.1, I would like to just point out, prior to any purchase of or fundraising for the purchase of goods or services for the district, the group will confer with the superintendent to assist the group in purchasing goods or services to meet the school district's needs. So, in essence, this goes back to that point of me wanting to make sure any donations are brought to the board. Because realistically, they should be coming to me anyway. I think we got out of that habit in some years past, where they weren't always coming and they were just saying, we're gonna donate this money. And I think that that's important that we stick with that idea. It's in our policy too, that they should be coming to me first before they say we're gonna be donating these things. And I can designate obviously like Nick, but I've even talked to the Booster Club, you know, Diane's done a great job, she's told me they do. But like, or they are now for sure, I guess I don't know if I didn't ask about the past. But that anything they're doing is going through Nick now, for sure, because we just wanna make sure we don't end up with stuff and then have maintenance on it and without any kind of plan.
On this one, can I
Yes.
make a recommendation? So the third paragraph, which is just a sentence, if you look at what it says is that funds raised by these groups may be kept as part of the accounts in the school district, that's not true. And do it, we can't, well, I don't want to. But the recommendation is either funds raised by this group are separate from the accounts of the school district, or funds raised by these groups will be held. So I think I need to say that first bracketed sentence.
Sounds good, I mean, I think that'd be fine with me. Do any of you three have a problem with that? Okay. Okay. Community resource persons and volunteers, 903.2. Basically, this is just kind of saying we really like volunteers, but we are also gonna maintain things on, we make them take a background check and all
So
that
it
other stuff.
actually doesn't say that.
Do we not have?
We need to add that paragraph, that third paragraph in the recommendation, we need to add that part.
Oh, yes. We do make them take
We do.
background checks, but we should add that in the policy, it's not in the policy.
Yeah, but it needs to stay. I have a recommendation on the next one too.
Perfect.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Visitors to school district buildings and sites, what's your recommendation?
Well, so I think that it needs to say that we require them to check in and to be ran through our keep and track visitor management system. But just so you guys know, like a little background, before COVID, we implemented that keep and track system. Got a lot of pushback, and to this day, we still get parents who are really upset about it, and I think it'd be nice,
About what?
about checking in through
Having
the
check-in?
system, yeah.
During the school day.
Very upset people.
There's-
And, oh, well, I
They
just,
just feel like they just have
the right to
free
be here,
access to
yeah.
the school.
I would like it, I think it would be important for the board to take a stance to put it in policy so that whoever our secretary is has the right to say, look, this is it, you know, like, you have to check in, it's board policy.
Back in the day, that was fine, but in today's climate, there's no way.
Yep.
Yeah, and so I had to actually individually address it with a couple people that were pretty awful to our secretaries.
Yeah, that's.
It's-
And, when they were asked to check in, and they were like, I don't have to check in, and they just walked on down.
Yeah, well, then we need to do something, we need to have a policy that we do something with those people
Yep,
to prevent that, because that's bullshit.
yeah,
If it's a policy, that's what we're doing, it's a rule, you're gonna follow it, I don't care who
It's
it is.
safety too.
it is, that's
what
the
it's all
thing is,
about.
this-
It's all about safety, it's all about student safety.
exactly, and that system will come up with two flags, one if they are a sex offender, and two if they have criminal piece that would not allow them on the premise.
Well, then you have to know who's here in case they come in and take a kid, take their kids, you know, you guys aren't supposed to be all privy to relationships and marital stuff and family stuff. Check in, period.
Yep.
And if
Yep.
you have a problem with that, you give any verbal abuse, 'cause that's a rule.
No, I agree 100%.
I would just ask if we put it as, instead of saying the check-in system specifically,
The
like,
visitor management.
just that
Yes.
whatever
Yes.
whatever visitor management process
Cause
is.
that's gonna
consistent.
change.
Yeah,
Yeah, but just implying that you do have to follow these rules. And I actually when Brevity was here, I said, you can eliminate that, just set it right next to it.
Yep.
Not gonna take these lease map from anymore.
that is right.
Is the door from the, say, the elementary office,
Mhm.
is that locked? Is,
They're supposed to be fixing that actually this week or next week.
Which
The-
door are you at?
well, like, from the secretary's office into the hall, like the common
No,
hall?
it's open.
So they could, I mean, all they have to do is say, I don't wanna check in,
And then just walk
through.
in, yep.
Correct.
So, I mean, can we get that locked and?
Well, we have all the students and stuff that come in and out of that as well as teachers from that door.
Cause that's
So
how you
that's
get to the
why-
principal's office too.
Mhm. So, like, cause you're talking about that one right by the office there, the solid wood one,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So then we would, if it was locked, then we'd have the kids coming in and out, or they wouldn't be able to get in and out when they're coming to the
But
office.
they could go in the second door behind her.
Well, they could, but then they sometimes,
They just wouldn't fall.
Isn't that by the nurse's office though?
Yeah.
that is by,
Oh, yes, but
there's
it
the
comes
nurse.
in
But,
behind
but
the
like, I'm
secretary.
thinking, well, you already have access to this, if you've been granted access into the building, you should be able to come out of it.
Yeah.
But you should be able to maybe be buzzed into it.
Well, the other aspect of that is the door goes this way, and so it's like, that's the inside of the door, so it's locked from the hallway side. So if they're in by the secretary door, even if you had it shut and locked, they can open it, cause on the inside they can. Cause it's like the inside of, like, you know, it's if I'm at my office, even if my door's locked, I can open it, it's that same. Mm-hmm. So. But.
And maybe that's overthinking it for just a couple
No, I
people
don't,
around
I mean, I
couple
don't
of-
honestly
know.
think that's overthinking it, I think it'd be actually, like, there's newer buildings that have, like, if it was a different door, I think that'd be manageable. And but that door, even if we got like a new window door, we have a new window door to put there, of course, just gotta put it up. Even with that, the way it still opens and then it's manual, like it might be one where in the future we could do like a fob on it. Like our new fob, so when we're getting our new fob doors in throughout already, they put a lot of them in. The new system is an app on the phone, and so then I can literally do a lockdown from my phone on all the fob doors. And just like no fob works. And so the end goal is that all of those doors will eventually be fobbed on the outside. We could do the same kind of thing in the future with like all the office doors and stuff. So that eventually then you could literally lock, like a lockdown mode where you couldn't even manually open it.
Now, is it on its own Wi-Fi, or you can do that from school Wi-Fi, or you can do it from home?
I can do it from
So
home.
it's web-based?
Mm-hmm, yep. So they switched the system, it's supposed to be really nice, we don't have it up and running, which is why the door's not, we couldn't change the door system for tonight, but it is web-based, but it's not on all the doors. We didn't have enough money to get all the doors done, we had 20-some.
Yeah, well,
But
if you can lock some down,
better than none. Mm-hmm. So, it'll be good, but I think that would be a good idea, once we can get like a fob on those, because Corey and I talked about, that'd be nice to have the fobs on the office doors, like we have on this one. So, the public conduct on school premise is just basically saying that we expect you to treat each other with respect, behavior, responsible behavior, all that other piece. And here's what we would have for provisions. You know, if somebody gets physically or verbally abusive, you know. I have used that last I've used the last part of it where we have excluded somebody from the premise from coming back. And what I usually do in that sense is they get a certified letter in the mail, we also send it to the sheriff's department.
You did that here?
Yes, I did. I did, to a person here this year. And, they were definitely doing all these things. And, so we kicked them out. But whenever I do that, what I say is, in the letter that I send to the sheriff as well as what I send to them is, you know, if you'd like to get access back to the building, you need to set up a time to meet with me where we can have a civil conversation and talk about expectations before you're allowed back on the premise. And so then that letter is in effect, and basically what it means is if they come back without having that meeting first and me informing the sheriff, we could then arrest them for trespassing. but we only do that in pretty severe instances. So, they have to also have done something towards the staff in order to warrant it. Because it's hard to justify unless they've done something pretty severe. But I have that here, I've done it a couple times in Spencer. So I would just say leave it as is. 905.4, kind of throws off there, that actually is not, there's not a pop, I think it's 903.4 maybe, 903.4, R1. So this is just a fan behavior policy, we made a regulation to go along with our expectations. There is no board policy, or Sibley board policy, Sibley is the system that ISB uses, so there's no ISB policy that goes along with that. I do think that's really good, I don't really see any issue with changing that, but I want you guys to look over that. If there's anything you want adapted. I guess you guys don't have one, let me pull it up, sorry. It's in the binder.
I'm just following along on our website for our current ones.
Perfect. So there it is. So these are like unacceptable behaviors, acceptable behaviors, and then there's violations that can result in this. You know, the only thing I would honestly maybe say is instead of saying will, it probably should be may. Because some of these things on here, I'm not sure if it requires a through home thing. Yeah, that's. But otherwise, I think it's pretty good. Any changes that you guys would like to recommend for that? I didn't have any, other than possibly the may. I always just like to have a little bit of flexibility in there. Do you guys mind if I change that to may?
First offense, fan may not be allowed.
So if I would say violations of this policy may result in the following. So then it's like, if we charge them with a first offense, then that's what it would be. The only reason I say that, most of those on the unacceptable probably do deserve that. But I mean, you know, sometimes it's just a little bit like discretion on, all right, you know, yes, they should not be blaming the loss of the game on officials, coaches or participants. But on the same token, you know, I've even had times where I turn around and, man, that one call was pretty bad. You know, we say Matt's blame.
On the other hand, they may be right.
Well, they may be right, but they still shouldn't say it, but on the same token, I don't know if they should be kicked out for 3 games for that. You know, that would be where I'd say. On the same token, you know, destruction of property, signs, or equipment, I almost wanna put them on like the second offense. You know, jump to the second offense, instead of just going straight to the first offense. If you destroyed, like, a sign that we had, you know, the sign probably costs like $500 to put up, to make and put up.
So then you'd have to change the first offense to first degree, second degree, third degree, instead of
You could do that.
third occurrence. If third offense, it's not.
Yeah.
I could say first offense or degree or, yeah, just change those, update it. I'll put may and then update. Offense to degree. Just, I think that gives a little bit more, because some of those seem more, I mean, none of them are acceptable, but some of them seem more drastic than others, is what I would say. Is that okay with you all?
Yep.
Okay. Distribution of materials. This, actually, what I would like to just state is not, I don't want anything changed on this. But what I wanna just preface with you guys is I'm gonna make it very specific that I do not wanna inundate families with stuff. And so they talk about all these messages they constantly copy, like reach well, everything else. So with our new SIS, we can make groups. So like, for example, instead of having to send out something about a sport game being canceled to everybody, or, I mean, we could still, but I mean, you could target just this team for a message. You can target just this, like, you can be more targeted in your message
Like
that you
a
make.
grade or a t-shirt.
Instead of like, we send, I mean,
Class name,
you
right?
could, yes, and you could do like, you could do grades in JMC and things like that, but you can even be more specific and give them tags. So like everybody with this tag, and you can give kids as many tags as you want. So then you could make a message with all these tags, or just a couple of these tags, and specify it more. But I wanna keep the SIS more focused on specific school announcements and not send everything else, and I'd like to use our social media to be the way that we share other more general information. So it's like, you know, if you have an order for shirts, we'll put that on Facebook, but we're not gonna send that order for wrestling shirts to all families K-12, we're gonna put it on Facebook. The reason being, because I get a lot of feedback from the families, like, quit sending me all these messages, because I'm not gonna order wrestling shirts because my kid's in kindergarten. I'm not gonna order softball shirts because my kid's
Is
in
there a
kindergarten.
way through the system for someone to say, Chet, send me some stuff about wrestling, send me stuff about
That actually
band?
might not be a bad idea.
Because if you talk about community members wanting to, you wanting
Well, in
to
the
sign up for
community
it.
menu, but yes, I did, but then on the same token, like, that would be like general, all, like, you know, that would probably be, and I used a bad example, it's like that game canceled. Like, that message is gonna go out, like, our softball game was canceled.
Yeah, you want everybody.
You want everybody to see that one.
But if an FFA meeting gets canceled.
You might just be able to say FFA, you know, and I wanna be able to target that a little bit more without inundating families, because that, you know, and I mean, the other aspect of that is my name usually is the email that they respond back to. So I get all of it. Take me, like, literally just the other day, take me off this beep, beep, beep list.
They said beep, 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 that's pretty nice.
Beep, 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 yeah, well.
But-
FGD list.
Golly. But you understand what I'm saying though, right? If we're gonna use this system also for
Yes.
community members,
That's a good idea, like, if they can check into it, so maybe what I would do instead is, cause I could add tags to them. So I could say, what things are you interested in knowing about, and then we could tag that, and then send messages via the tag, versus, we're not gonna blast this out to, but we will blast it out on all our social media. So like, no matter what, any order, we'll put that out on the social media. We do get a lot, like, if you went back and looked at our reach well, there were days where there'd be 20 messages sent out on reach well. And I'm like, that's a lot of messages.
I can see where that can
Get annoying. And that's not specifically in this policy, but it's part of this policy. So, I just wanted you to know that I'm taking advantage of the fact that we're switching away from reach well to try to just change that a little bit. Otherwise, I have no changes for that one. Money raising activities in schools. That one is basically saying they can't raise money for other things, which is totally fine. 904.1, transporting students in private vehicles. Don't have any change in that one. I don't have any problem with the advertising and promotion. Community use of school district facilities and equipment, you guys actually did adjust this last year, so we don't really need to look at that one. Should have taken that off. Tobacco nicotine-free environment. I think that's fine because it says nicotine in there, but what we could actually just say is,
Didn't we change that to include vaping or something?
we did that on, we did that on the student handbook,
Oh.
so we could probably just add that on this, if you guys are okay with that.
Yep.
yeah.
Include vaping specifically. Okay. Weapons in the school district, this is actually a change that we have to do anyway. Sorry. And what that is, there's also a, here we go. So basically, this was updated, so if you wanna jump, this is a new policy, you can actually look at the recommendations on there. It is 905.3. And you'll see the highlighted parts. So basically what this does is there is the weapons in the school district, so it has the clause which would allow certain staff to have weapons in the school district. I would recommend that we should just stick for now with the district shall not authorize staff members to carry firearms on school grounds in accordance with Iowa Code 724.6.
So you'd recommend we go against?
I don't think we, I mean, unless we had a plan in place or a reason to do it, because we can always come back and add it, but I do not believe we should arm our staff. I believe we should look at getting a school resource officer. I would tell you my assistant principal was a high-ranking National Guard officer, and he didn't want to be armed in the school. And so,
I don't disagree with that. All I was wondering is, since the law changed, do we have to change any law?
basically, we just, there's, if you look at that recommendation on the bottom there, under 905.3, it's you pick one or the other. The district shall not authorize, or the district may choose to allow. And what I would, because they still technically don't have insurance coverage, even if we have it in there. But my.
They haven't found it yet.
No, they still haven't, even though they've gotten the approval, they still haven't gotten the insurance coverage yet. But my thing would be, unless for some reason there was a specific plan in place, putting the may piece on there is going to cause me issues. And it's gonna cause issues in general of, and I'll tell you that the only people that in our staff I've had one person express an interest to be a staff member, and I would never in 100 years on that staff member. I would never do it.
Okay, so here's another thing. If I'm a bad guy, and I see a policy that says we absolutely do not allow any staff members to have a weapon, I know it's a soft target.
Well, that's where I wouldn't say that I would say it's a soft target for sure. Because what I would, like I said, what I'd like to do is get an SRO.
No, I get it, but what I'm telling you, before we get an SRO, if I'm looking at this, I know there's no armed individuals in the school. If it says we may allow it, you don't have to. It's still up to your discretion. But if we say we may allow it, now we're like, I wonder how many of those teachers in that school in Alburnett have weapons. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yes, but again,
How many people that are gonna come in here to shoot the school are gonna look at this policy for themselves? I find it hard to believe that they would actually go through that hassle.
They may not.
I don't think they would. The other thing would be is our policies are part of what insurance companies look at when they determine our rates too. And so if they're not getting coverage yet, they could look at that and say, that's a higher risk piece anyway. And so I would still rather wait, even if that was a route you guys wanted to go, I'd still rather wait to see how somebody else does it first. Because I don't want to be the one to come up with policies for this. And I don't think I could. And additionally, like,
It almost have to be, we'd have to incorporate it into our safety procedures,
Yeah.
right?
What I would say is if I had a retired police officer and they were willing to come be an employee here, I would give them, that's fine.
Right, again,
But
we're
then
not actually harming anybody. We're
Yeah,
just
but I
saying
would ask, Yeah, but again, like I said, between the insurance piece and then the policies, like, that means I have to come up with a policy for how we would do it anyway, cause now it's board approved. Which means then there has to be some way for me to eventually assign people to have a gun. And I'm like,
Cause this isn't saying,
So, 'cause
if
it
you wanna
says-
carry, you can.
it's not saying you wanna carry, you can, what it says though is the superintendent will then create regulations necessary to carry out this policy.
If he assigns somebody, or.
It just
or
says
if
the
this- or
if this is
approved,
adopted, I will have to come up
It's
with,
adopted.
yep, that's how it's worded right here. And it says the superintendent will create regulations necessary to carry out this policy. And I'm like, oh,
You don't do that?
no, I don't, I don't.
The only thing I have about this policy is the very last, like, paragraph. It says, individuals found to be in violation of this district policy will be required to immediately remove the weapon, dangerous object, or look like. Should that be a little more tight, like, oh, you brought your gun to school, please go take it home? You know, I look at that extreme. At that point, it would be like, no, we're calling the police, which probably was already done.
So maybe honestly, just put it in here like,
Are you still talking employee?
he's at the, he's actually up at higher,
Employee or whoever,
it says any individual up there. So any individual found to be in violation of this district policy will be required to immediately remove the weapon, dangerous object, or lookalikes from the school district property or event. Students found to be in violation of this policy or other board policies related to weapons will be subject to disciplinary proceedings.
I don't necessarily know if it's a good idea to say, please leave and take your weapon.
Weapon with you, yeah,
You know?
will be required to immediately, students found to be in violation of this district policy,
Individuals found.
and I'm, yes, or
That way it
individuals.
covers teachers or parents or whatever.
I'm trying to think of how it would work, and then it would be, law enforcement may be utilized for the removal of, maybe instead of saying that they will be required to, is individuals found in violation of this district policy, for individuals found in violation of this district policy, law enforcement may be utilized.
Contacted
Yes, okay. So,
to remove.
enforcement, contacted to immediately remove the weapon. Okay. I got that one down.
On another note with this topic, Will has done some deep dive into the different law enforcement agencies around here and if they allow their staff to carry, when they're in civilian clothes, because we had a,
What's that?
Will?
Yes. Sorry, do you know, is there like testing going on or anything? Cause there's like beeping coming from both the elementary and the high school offices. It's like this black case, it says system trouble or something like that.
Thank you, we'll get a hold of it.
Yeah, sorry.
Um,
I just heard it, I was like, what is that?
okay.
Did it send you over?
No, that one I don't get, that's not the, that's probably the fire alarm.
Is it train? I mean,
That's just fire
Is it a
alarm.
train system?
It could be trained, it's either, yeah, it could be trained too, but like, so whenever we get electric going out, so we got electric going on Monday, then the system itself will periodically just start beeping because something's messed up on it for the next week. Corey usually has to come in and like reset it 2 or 3 times. But could also be trained, because that also goes off fairly often.
It's trained.
That's our like HVAC, it's all managed by Train, is the company or the product or whatever it is. So Corey's got that as well. on an app on his phone. So Corey could actually, and I mean, I could get this, but I don't want it. He could go on his phone and change our temperature in here if he wanted to. So if he was really mad, he'd make it like 85.
Turn the heat on.
Turn it up.
Do we need to wait for Harley,
Yeah,
secretary?
yep, yep.
I'm gonna look for in the notes, if she knows that she left. Tell her when she comes back.
Oh, yeah. 8:56. 8:56. Got it.
If she doesn't, I'm gonna reject the whole thing, and be like, no, these are wrong.
What else did you mess up?
You
Yeah.
What?
What else
Done.
did you mess up? My family knows I'm in a board meeting, yet all of them have managed to text me. Some of them separately and.
Well, you can text them back right now if you want, because we're kind of waiting.
Oh, no, cause then they.
Did it just speed the fire?
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, we can probably keep going a little bit, because on this case, what she does is she takes my notes
Hmm.
and stores them after I make the updates.
Okay, no, it was a question, do we need to wait for, if we don't
Well,
need to.
for most things you would, because if you're gonna do the action, she's writing it down, but since these notes, she takes mine. And then this is the binder that's kept on file for people to review. I think we can still have the discussion, because really, like I said, the question, I again would really prefer that we just not authorize for now, because we can always, if there's ever a plan that you guys wanna do, that doesn't require me to make the plan, and is already tried and tested with insurance and stuff too, then we can maybe kind of review it again. That'd be my recommendation.
Yeah, I don't need to authorize
Yeah.
staff or personnel to have, without a plan,
Yeah.
you know, and we're not willing to hash that out right now.
What I'd rather, and I was gonna say, what I'd rather do
Yeah,
is
that's
find
for,
it,
that's for a long skip, I mean, that's
that's a long-term,
a
Whole other,
whole other conversation, yeah.
and maybe long-term, you know, because my problem is I can't really find anybody to share with them, maybe the city might be interested
Maybe.
in eventually sharing a police officer.
I've heard the mayor's kind of badass, so she might be.
maybe that'll be a perk.
You know what?
So maybe
See, I'm
we
not,
could get a.
I'm not opposed to having designated staff members and.
Well, and I think if we went that route, my thought would be, I would go try to find a retired police officer and find some role for them to come in and fill. Even if it was like, you know, if you could just come in here for like this amount, even if it was very part-time, but it was randomized. So it's like, if you can come in, you know, like for a total of, I don't know, 25% of the week, but just spread out some of that time, so it's never the same time any week. So nobody could ever predict when you're gonna be in here. You could come for like an hour this day, 2 hours this day, 1 hour this day, and just constantly make it different. And I think that would, in and of itself, serve the purpose.
Was the state at one time talking about having, giving subsidizing?
They didn't follow through with it, because if they would have, I would have gotten this in this other one.
Yeah, I thought that was in the broad scope of discussion.
It was only broadly spoke about as a one-time grant, right?
Yeah, but,
Like
so
when
part of
you're-
that is like you can get the equipment for them, because to fully equip an officer, you know, according to the sheriff's department, they said it'd be over $100,000 to fully equip this officer. So that's why when I reached out to them for sharing, it'd be $100,000 to fully equip the officer, and then they wanted us to pay for, I don't remember, like a large portion of the salary, for a 20% share. And I, you know, I couldn't justify that. But, you know, if it was something else where, no, did not include a car. Did not, well, maybe it did include a car, maybe it did. I didn't have, he said it'd be over $100,000 to fully equip an officer. And we can pay for that out of Heppel. So we could pay to equip an officer out of Heppel. So I would have no problem, you know, if you guys were okay with it, I would have no problem getting all their equipment and a vehicle out of Heppel.
We work it into the budget.
It'd be worth it for the safety, like, I would be totally, but, you know, the issue would be where, cause remember when you do wanna get the sharing dollars, and it has to be another public entity, obviously, to share with.
This is why I stopped coming.
I know, right? I know. But you do have to have a public entity to share with, you know. Maybe it could be something where like, you know, if you reach out, we could have it 3/4 of the time, and pay for 3/4 of the salary, and the city could have it 1/4 of the time, because they could have it in the summer. Or they have the summer. So, yeah. I don't know how it works, I'm just saying, but, or even if you split it like 50/50, you know, I mean, it'd be nice to.
Is that something
Maybe
you could
it-
share with another school, you mean?
So
even,
the
or
one
not,
thing
or
is,
that doesn't
you have to
work?
share, the officer, I mean, you can share with another school and you still get the sharing dollars. But the officer, if it's an official school resource officer, they have to be under like a city or county or share, like, you know, you have to be under like a sheriff's department or a police department within a city or town.
Gotcha.
And so the city has the authority to have a police officer. We don't by ourselves. We could share a retired police officer under this policy possibly, and I'd be willing to do that. Like look and see if, you know, like North Lynn and Central City would share a retired police officer. You know, full-time, you could do that or something along those lines. And then we would do this policy and have a meeting. And so I've actually reached out to superintendents already about that kind of thing, and I've reached out to a couple of retired police officers. So far I haven't found anyone.
Have you reached out to the city?
I haven't reached out to the city yet, but
Maybe
since she was
they-
sitting here right now,
Maybe they should, maybe the city should
Might
have
just
an
be laying
officer.
the groundwork.
and we could help equip that officer and then help pay the salary.
I'm sure we could lease him an office,
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I suppose. Talk to the city.
But if we got a plan like that in place, then I think that would be worth it. Because again, you could get a vehicle and equip them from Pebble.
One of the older buses.
That could be his vehicle and his office.
Short bus.
Yeah.
Little night on
And if I can figure something out, then I think we can just come back to that one and change it if need be, but I would not like to do that, and I would not like to be the first one to do that, by any means, at all. Sorry.
that. Unmanned aircraft.
Unmanned aircrafts, drones, I have no problem with that. This basically is, it's just basically they get permission to use a drone.
How does that, work with our, with the, like some of those families that have asked to not be recorded and stuff like that?
Yes.
How does that
Yep.
work together?
So if they are not, what they can't do then is they can't get close enough, like, if they don't get close enough to see an individual's face, doesn't matter.
So if they're playing a football game, that-
Where
And I
is,
will tell you that if they're an athlete, then actually even if they fill out the form, it's exempt.
oh,
Because if you're an athlete or in an activity yourself, then that form, the legal precedent is that there was a reasonable expectation, you're gonna get pictures taken, you're gonna get photos taken,
Gotcha.
to camera and video, because you're out on that field, or you're up on that stage, or whatever else. So in that case, the school's not responsible if you get pictures taken of you. Because there's a reasonable expectation, if you participate in an activity, that during that activity, pictures and things will be taken.
that makes sense.
And that was a previous court case. Okay, that is all of our regularly scheduled review ones. So now we are just on to the legal ones. We've already done Title IX, so we just have the legal ones to go through, and then we're done.
board member social media engagement? I don't have this one up here because it's obviously new.
It is new, so this one you've got in the packet now. So these all new ones you've got in the, in that packet. So you guys all have these in front of you. The other ones were all in the binder I gave you in June. So this first one, board member social media engagement, this is because of a Supreme Court decision this past spring in the Lakey versus Freed, which talks about publicly elected official social media statements and accounts and when they constitute a public forum and when it's free speech protected. So this is basically policy based on a ruling by the Supreme Court this past spring. Now, look at the bottom, if you would. While it is intended to provide a basic legal structure, boards are encouraged to comprehensively discuss this topic at the board table so they can develop understanding and consensus behind it. So this is the broad, like SCOTUS gave a broad general, and so this is what ISBA interpreted that as. But it's not actually like as specific. So there is some ability to change some of this. So if you guys look over this and there's a possibility, I'd still probably go review it with the legal. There's a possibility to change some of this is what it's basically stating. It's just important to look it over.
We go all over the place with this thing.
They do.
They're like, you can do a lot, can't do much, you can do a lot. That's what it feels like.
It does. So basically how I interpret this is, you can on your own personal one make statements, but you have to remember that you're still liable for them.
Mhm.
We're stating that they are not part of the school district's stance if you put anything on social media on your own personal ones. That's your own personal stance, it's not the social, even if it was you who did it, Jason, since you can speak for the board, you would have to, it has to go through the district, social media accounts to be district statements.
I, after reading this, I think that middle, there's a lot being said here. I like this paragraph right there. I think that says everything we need.
The second one?
The second one. A lot of our policies are short and sweet. I like that second one.
I would also add just that's the third paragraph. Specifically because it's got this privacy pieces in there.
Yeah, it talks about the safeguarding of.
That's fine, I just don't think we need the whole thing.
Okay,
It's easy for me, I don't have any social media.
Is that right?
I have none.
Good for you, man. That's what we-
I'm one of those unicorns.
Probably find anything out. Live under a rock. At least you don't have to try to sort through stuff. Sort through what's true and what's not.
Yeah. Next.
okay. Secretary Treasurer one, basically this change, the only thing it does, if you look at the updated one, is it allows us to provide an insurance policy that specifically insures our Secretary Treasurer. So previously it was just a bond. So basically, the idea is it's something that we were glad happened, because the general idea is that sometimes errors and omissions in policies can sometimes happen, things like that. Then that way there's, I'm reading this from IASB. So, prior to, if anything happened that, Harley made a mistake for, we would need a bond to cover that. Now we could use an insurance policy to cover that instead. So we could get an insurance policy. Harley doesn't make mistakes, but in the off chance she did, now we could use an insurance policy instead of take out a bond. And that's really what this is doing. So it's helpful.
So do we know
So
how
it
much
doesn't,
one of those,
yeah. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
do we know how much one of those policies cost?
I mean, you really only need it when you're doing like big projects, so.
So like if we were to do this again,
You can take insurance.
we
instead
could
of
take
doing part of
insurance in case Harley messes up.
So otherwise you bond for that, doesn't a bond have to pass a vote?
No, it's a different kind of bond,
Yeah.
it's like an insurance bond.
Yep.
So we actually have one on me right now,
Oh, okay.
and it's not for individual projects that I'm not really interested in.
Well, I just was reading what
It's more
ISBA
broad.
said.
It's like,
So
so
it's
like
like-
I'm
it's
also
like-
bonded as the clerk for the Monroe Township
Right, so it's
too.
like more of a construction bond.
No, it's like a bond, it's pretty much like an insurance policy. I mean, I
It's
can't
just
tell you what
worded
the
different,
difference
or
is,
Like a security bond.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
so, yeah.
Does that mean
But
you
it's not for,
hold a certain amount of money somewhere,
That's how I take bond
and
it's only like $500.
that's nothing.
I don't know.
Well, we just count on Northern United
That's
States.
pretty big.
It doesn't take anymore.
$500
That's a pretty
mistake.
big mistake.
$500.
Yeah.
Oh.
I honestly don't know, but I know that I had to get bonded when I started here. That's all I know.
I'll look into it more for the insurance policy piece of it, because, cause I'm not,
Because to me, an insurance policy is something that we have to pay for every year. And a
Yep.
bond is something you would just have.
we just have.
It's a one-time deal, right?
That's interesting though, because from my experience at the township, I pay it annually. I
You
pay
pay
the
for a bond
annually,
as
but
well.
out here I have not.
Hmm.
I guess I'm probably making a mistake by not bonding
Are you
myself.
still bonded?
I don't know.
We'll
Now I'm
check.
curious.
We'll check.
She's not gonna sleep tonight.
I probably
Oh.
won't.
Hmm.
Figure out how I got bonded before.
You're tired now. It's late. The limitations to employee references, so this just expands the behavior, and so it adds like the sexual misconduct, grooming behavior, and any other inappropriate relationships with students, and it also adds volunteers to it. That was part of the state law, so obviously we're not gonna do any other changes there, we're just gonna leave that as is. I read it wrong, sorry. Okay. Oh, I put that in there twice, that's why. Is it Lions? The same thing for the abuse of students by school district employees. It just expands, the pieces there, like adding the grooming behavior and specifically mention sexual or physical relationships. Also adds timely reporting to all relevant agencies as required by law. So just making sure that it all gets reported to any relevant agencies. There's nothing really to worry about there. The compulsory attendance, this is the, general policy for the new law on, chronic absenteeism. Then there's the regulations on the next one. So you'll note that I put in the 80% up there, because they have to attend an 80% of the days or hours where they are chronically absent per the law. And so, what they had written there, I'll just be honest, is they wanted me to put the actual number of days or hours that would equate to.
Hmm.
And I don't really wanna do that, cause I'm gonna have to change that every year.
Mhm.
Well, not necessarily, but the calendar's not the exact same every year.
Right.
It doesn't have the same number of hours, so, I just put the percentage, it should be just fine. Because then we don't have to change it every year. But you can see what the excuses are on there. And we've got those in that handbook policy already, and we updated it after our previous discussion. But then you can see that the student absence excuse was the previous policy that talked about truancy. Now it is 501.9, and so that also adds on to the compulsory attendance piece. And again, I put a percentage instead of actually putting the days or hours. And so,
What did we talk about
I'm actually thinking of
last time or meeting or meeting before? To alleviate the secretaries having to deal with this a
We're
lot?
talking about trying to incorporate that into OMA.
Yes.
Yep, and we already, so we've got, I do believe they're looking into, I think there's an option to let parents self-report that. And so we did put in the first, like, so the parents can call like 5 days in sick for their kids, but after 5 days, it requires a medical excuse. And so, but if they bring a medical excuse previously, then that just adds on. So like, let's say they called in twice because the kid just had a fever, they didn't take him to the doctor. Third time the kid has strep throat. So if they bring a doctor's note saying they went and did strep throat, then they still have 3 more days that they can just call in without going to get a doctor's note in that semester. If they do not get the doctor's note from that day, then they only have 2 more days that they can call in on their own that semester. Realistically, like 5 days. Vacation and stuff doesn't count, but to be quite honest, I'm gonna tell you that there's gonna be some parents that are just gonna call in sick if they have an extended vacation. And I don't really care, as long as they don't use more than their 5 days. Because we're probably not gonna follow up on it that closely for the first 5 days. But then after the 5 days, then it is in here like, doctor's note. You gotta have a doctor's note. And so if they go get a doctor's note for any previous thing, totally fine, still counts. But basically, we're kind of giving them, in essence, you're getting 5 days. Like, you can just call them in for 5 days, still counts towards the chronic absenteeism, but we're not requiring the doctor's notes or anything like that. Because federally, that's how they define it.
Does that mean in September, Nash is sick for 3 days, then October he's sick for 3 more days?
That 6th day, you need a doctor's note, unless any of those previous days he had a doctor's note.
What happens if we don't bring in a doctor's note?
So then actually, then what happens is you have to get, and this was not even our choice, so this is actually, I'm gonna have you jump to, well, it's down there on the bottom, so if you first look, it says a disciplinary sanction. So what we're basically saying is students receiving special education service will not be assigned a disciplinary sanction unless the goals and objectives of the individual education program are capable of being met during that. Well, if you jump to 501.9R, the way they have it is you are required to get a 2-to-1 consequence for unexcused absences. So then that's considered an unexcused absence on that 6th one. And so it's a 2-to-1 consequence. So, for example, if they miss a day, they're supposed to get 2 consequences if it was a day of unexcused. How we've actually decided to do that. So they have written in here like Saturday school, in-school suspension, things like that as options to put in. We did not want that. Because number one, Saturday school is really hard to enforce. And it sucks for everybody, not just the kids. In-school suspension, well, they already missed a day unexcused. Taking them out of the classes is gonna hurt their education more. So we want them in the class. So what we did is a Wednesday, like after school. And so you have to do it on a 2-to-1. So if they miss a full day of school unexcused, then they're gonna have Wednesday that week and Wednesday the following week. They have to come from 3:30 to 4:30. Kind of like a detention, but what we're gonna plan on doing is have them do like makeup work and things from when they were gone.
This is per semester.
Per semester. Per semester. And that 2-to-1 was not us. That was in the law. Because I was just, when I saw that, I was like, are you serious? And I went back and referenced it. I was like, it is 2-to-1. Because Josh and I are like, are you kidding me? Dude, yeah, it's 2-to-1.
So, using my same example where Nash was sick for 3 days in September, and then 3 days in October. If he's sick for 3 days in September, but I bring in a doctor's note.
Yep. That could excuse all 3 of those days.
Excuse all 3.
Then you are, like, so let's say, it's so, sick the 3 days in September, you bring in a doctor's note, all 3 of them are excused. You still have 5 left. Yep. I know. There's gonna be some upset people. But I mean, really, there's not much you can do about it. Like that's the law now, so just do it. And I don't think, in one sense, it is needed, because across the state, when your chronic absenteeism rate is over 35%,
Yeah,
like you do need it.
yeah.
And there is gonna be some unfortunate side effects where it's like, some people are getting punished for the whole. And that happens sometimes. There's not really anything you can do about it. Like realistically, we had a problem as a state, so they're trying to address it as a state, and I applaud them for that. So, I'm glad the legislators are trying to do something. There are gonna be some unintended consequences that'll probably cause headaches and people will be upset. But when it comes down to it, I'd rather have the kids in school anyway. But then if you keep going to that 501.9R1, this is where it goes into the legalities of it. And so the highlighted parts are where we kind of put in, so like for example, every time it said an appropriate disciplinary sanction, They had things like in-school suspension, Saturday school detention, yada yada. And we felt that'd be better to leave it in handbook to determine what that sanction would be. Because we've got to have the manpower to enforce it, number one. And again, like, so what I think the principal's plan is they're gonna have all staff, including themselves, rotate on those Wednesdays. Because then really it's like, you're doing one Wednesday, once every 2-3 months, depending on what building you're in. And we didn't want to have that same sanction in elementary as we did for secondary. So, we wanted a little more flexibility there. So we just put an appropriate disciplinary sanction and we'll put it in the handbook. And, yeah, the credit loss is pretty much only gonna happen at the secondary level. That's not gonna happen at the elementary. They're not gonna lose credit for absence. Otherwise, that is pretty much what the state law has. So really, when parents ask you, you know, you basically say, you got 5 sick days you can call in for. You know, we're not gonna really be checking on what you, I mean, if you say they're sick, we're gonna just take your word that they're sick for one of those 5 days. And so, to be honest, if there's a parent that does a vacation with their kids and they're gonna come back on a Monday, and they don't wanna have to deal with that being a chronically absent parent, quite frankly, they're probably just gonna call in sick and we're not gonna follow up. But after those 5 days, we are gonna have to follow it per law. So. I mean, thankfully, my wife always wants to take our kids to the doctor, even when we have a small cough, so. Like, we'll always have a no.
We'll always have an excuse.
We'll always have a no.
I think with partial, like appointments too, or is it have to be like half?
Yeah, well, you bring the doctor's note from the appointment. You bring doctors, I mean, any appointment, you can always bring a doctor's note, that's excused. Haircut appointment's not excused. Tattoo appointment's not excused.
I didn't know if it got that granular, if it was whole days.
No, it's by period. So for the example of that, like, so if it's one unexcused day, it's also one unexcused period. So if you have one, so that's why we actually did the Wednesday too. We're saying there are 2 sections, a 3:30 to 4 and a 4 to 4:30. So then that way, since it has to be a 2 for 1, if you miss a period, we can just say, you're staying from 3:30 to 4 and 4 to 4:30, and that's a 2 for 1. But the reason it has to be 2 separate Wednesdays on a full day is because it says a 2-day consequence. So it has to be on 2 separate days, the consequence.
So I wonder how because there's some schools that are doing 4-day school that go to school.
Yeah.
I wonder how the heck they. 'Cause
They'll probably say Fridays they gotta come in. That's what I would do, because a lot of the times the staff have to be in there on every other Friday anyway for PD, because they still have all their contract days. So the staff usually have to be in there every other Friday on the 4-day weeks. So my guess would be they'll turn that into a Friday school.
They have to be in there every other Friday typically, didn't they go to 4 days?
They went to 4 days.
To retain?
They went to 4 days
That's right.
to retain staff, but unless you expand the days significantly for that 4-day week, or you expand your calendar year, you still have 190 contract days for the staff.
So they didn't go to hours, they.
Well, they still are in hours, but the hours are for kids, that doesn't
No, I know,
matter
but
for staff
I don't know
contract.
I didn't know if the staff went to hours then, how that works.
They still are days, yep, so they still have to do 190 or somewhere it's usually 185 to 195, somewhere in there, or 190. So, they still have to do 190 contract days, even if you have only 160 days of school.
Huh.
So, they've got a lot more people, but they don't have it you'd have it every other Friday, or, you know, and the reason it's every other Friday is because they usually extended the work day on the Monday through Thursday. So that's why you wouldn't have it every Friday, it's every other Friday, or something along those lines. They do it differently.
I suppose that's how they work in snow days and that type of thing too.
Mm-hmm. Yep, snowmaker days on some of those Fridays. Can I just break my phone? Okay, that's not quick. So, next one, open enrollment transfers for 501.14 and 501.15. Basically, the 2 things that happen there is it reinstitutes the March 1st deadline. So, you have to open enroll by March 1st of that year to enroll now in the next year. That was effective July 1st. I am gonna bring that,
Why did they change that?
They changed that because we were getting kids jumping back and forth all the time, and they were jumping at any given time.
Just like they were told it was gonna happen.
Yeah, and they were told that was gonna happen, and so you have these kids, basically the kids that consistently jump are the ones that are lagging behind academically, so they're falling even more behind. And you get kids that would become chronically absent in one district, and before they could get charged with truancy, they'd open enroll to another district. And then it resets your truancy. So things like that. So they were taking advantage of that. And so, they reinstated the March 1st deadline. They just gave more exemptions from that, like more certified exemptions for when you could still transfer. And realistically, I think that's gonna be better in the long run, because you got a lot of kids falling behind because they go in the middle of the semester and they would now, like, they wouldn't necessarily be in the same spot as, if they came here from Linn-Mar was probably in a different subject. You know, now they're missing things completely. So, this helps, because now it's, okay, you're just gonna start at the beginning of the year. Kindergarten is September instead of March, so kindergarten you can do it up to September. And then there's other more exemptions of, like, private school closes down, you can come back at any time. Or if you leave out private school, you can go open enroll at that time, kind of thing. But, the other thing that has that in there is there's the transportation, because in certain districts, now you can go up to 2 miles into that district. So Cedar Rapids can't come into 2 miles into ours, but we can go up to 2 miles into Cedar Rapids or Linn-Mar to go pick up open enrolled kids. Doesn't really help us though, because our, like, pickups, like, the areas we would need to go 2 miles in the district, put us like on county home road,
Oh, because of our funky district.
because of our funky district. So it doesn't help us as much.
Is it actually miles traveled or is it crow flies?
I believe it's crow flies, but I
More
don't
of a
know.
radius,
I gotta double check. But I mean, I think, we looked at it, and where it put us was like on county home road, so I'll double check, those crow flies are kind of travel. But, so it doesn't help us a ton. The other last piece, is on here, the denying the open enrollment for truant kids. So if a kid becomes truant, they get sent back to their district. So that's on there as well. Bringing the hammer down. And so that's both of them. The weapons, 502.6, you'll see this policy. There is an exemption for students and individuals approved in writing by the superintendent or actively engaged in a school district approved firearms safety course, hunter education course, or shooting sports activity are exempt from this policy. And so I actually have to get administrative processor or procedures to figure out when that would be. I will do that after this is approved. I'm done yet.
Yeah, because we, archers.
Yeah, and the archers, yeah, the archers are definitely gonna be on there. I'll figure out the other part, I'm not really sure.
And we have trap shooting at Kennedy, and so technically one of our kids could sign up for that, right?
Yep, and I'd probably put like some kind of school sponsored or endorsed club, things like that, if we offered a hunter safety course on the premises. So, I'm hoping that somebody comes up with a policy and it's copied. 505.2 is the student retention piece, basically, and now what it does is, in addition to the school having the choice to retain, it gives the parents the option if they would like to retain their children in grades kindergarten through 6th. So basically, if a student's not reading at proficient level at the end of the year, the parent or guardian is notified, and parents can choose to retain the student for another year.
How many times can you do that?
They didn't put a limit on it. But there is a state law that we won't find kids to be in public education after the age of 21. Or at the age of 21, at the age of 21. So meaning like, do too many years and they won't be able to graduate. But basically what they put in there is, it used to be solely the school district's discretion. Now, the school district still does have the discretion, so we could choose to retain a child without the parent's consent. But now we must retain the child if the parent chooses to after finding out their child's not proficient.
So that's the criteria to be able to, as a parent,
Yep. Say we wanna retain their child.
So you just can't say, I don't think he needs to stay back.
No, they have to not be proficient in reading, and then they can choose to keep them retained a year. And we must honor that. All right, 603.1, the basic instruction program, that's just adding civics, that was part of a new law, not really anything big there. 603.12 is a new one, post-secondary education counseling. We had a 603.12, but it was outside resource people, there is no 603.12 from ISB. What I am asking you guys to do is, in addition to adopting 603.12, I'm asking you to change the number of outside resource people, the policy number to 603.13. And that is also under our board policy, a change that is considered minor, which would basically just be, we're not gonna change anything about this policy itself, just the policy number. So then I like to keep them aligned with ISB, so then when we do reviews and things, it's easy to find the right policy. So I would just, for that one, that we currently have a 603.12, I'm asking you to change it to 603.13, and then for the policy that they gave at 603.12, we don't have that policy, but we have to by law adopt that policy, so it's not like we have a choice. So, then, student health services, 607.2, they basically added dental screenings to ones that we are allowed to do now, because when they did that previous law about what invasive medical screenings, they didn't include dental. So we couldn't give kids dental screenings without parent consent. We can give them dental screenings again. That's really what it just did. School nutrition program doesn't allow us to use fake, misbranded meter egg products. So if they say they're meter egg, but they don't actually have meter egg in them, we can't use them. So like the plant-based meter eggs, we can't use them. That was the new law that they passed generally about, and so that's in our food policy. And then 801.3 I already went over with you guys. Actually, all the rest of them we have gone over. So we are done. Honestly, a lot faster than I was expecting. Way to go, you guys. You guys are fantastic.
Oh, well, you're Gavin. So then, now that we've finished those two readings, I would need technically two separate motions, if possible. The first motion would be to approve the second reading of the regularly scheduled review policies as noted in the policy review binder. That'd be the first motion, and then I can give you the second one about the law change ones afterwards. So, I'll make a motion to approve the second reading of the
Policies
policy
for review,
Yeah, policy for review.
Second.
as noted in the binder.
As noted in the binder, yeah.
I'll second the motion.
That's 9.
Second reading, list of policies. Yeah, yeah.
Got it.
Oh, I got it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
Motion passes. How about the second group?
The second one, what I need is, I would need a motion to approve the policies updated due to legislative changes in one reading as noted in the binder.
I'll make a motion to approve policies updated by the legislator as noted in the binder.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve policies updated by legislation.
You need to say something.
In the binder.
As noted in the binder.
As noted in the
In one
binder.
reading.
In one reading. You did use it.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, motion carries.
Uh,
We gotta start writing that down.
Yeah. You mean you want it right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I should have written that down,
You
that was
got
my
it.
fault.
Yeah.
so you can just read it.
How about we confirm the date and time for the next regular board meeting? 6 o'clock night, August 19th.
August 19th.
How about motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
So we need a second to adjourn. 9:38, 37.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Awesome, thank you guys very much.
Thanks for sticking it out, Bethany.